The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and some very important questions to answer. Like, why are the pages stuck together? What happened in Kansas City? And why do I watch TV shows that emotionally destroy me?
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This is podcast episode number 277. This week we're going to be covering episode 4 and episode 5, a twofer of The Last of Us. The titles of the episodes are Please Hold to My Hand and Endure and Survive.
And we promise that this episode will be only slightly longer than the last episode.
It will be slightly less. It'll be slightly less, I think. We got a little bit less feedback this time around. And
now you've done it.
I know. I'm giving us the bad karma off the bat.
The whammy is in effect.
The whammy is in effect. So we will be following our regular format, but we will double it up. We'll do our quick thoughts, episode description, and individual thoughts on episode 4. And then we will do exactly the same thing for episode 5. Try and keep them separate as much as we can, although I think these episodes are linked more than probably any of the other episodes we've done so far. So it's good that we're covering 4 with 5. It worked out well that it didn't split in another way. So
yeah, these two are really one big story.
It really is. So these were good to cover together. So we're excited about that. So first off, I think
you went first the last time, so it's I'm up again.
So what are your quick thoughts just on the episode 4? Please hold to my hand. And that is the title, people. That's the title.
that according to HBO, that is the
and
title.
The Hank Williams song.
Yes, Hank Williams. That's before my time, but it's still good.
Yes.
I thought it was great. If you compare it or place it next to episode 3, which was, the relationship story and not a lot of action, very little infected and so on. And then you get to this one and, it kind of picks back up, right? They put their foot on the gas a little bit more in terms of the narrative.
Right.
And they're pushing us, further west, as it were, to Wyoming and Tommy and God knows what. And I thought there was some amazing stuff in there that was, wonderful transfers from the video game, which we can get into a little bit later when we get to our individual stuff. And there was also, some incredible, I don't want to say new stuff, but sort of building on the game and adding, the Monica, the Melanie Linsky character, she, Kathleen, was awesome. I love Melanie Linsky. So seeing her and then seeing John Getz was great. And so there's a lot of great casting that shows up in this one. And yeah, so I thought this one was exciting, and it was certainly the way it ends, you're like, oh, what's going on? Although I kind of had a little idea because I've played the game and they are following a lot of the script of the game. So I kind of have a little idea of, okay, I wonder, they'll do stuff and I'll be like, okay, they're doing that. And then I'm like, I wonder if they'll end up doing this, that happens in the game, that kind of thing. And so I'm really enjoying that to see what bits and pieces they're picking from it. But yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was exciting. Well put together episode. What'd you think?
I really, really liked it. I'm not sure if I had a favorite of the two. I think I loved them both very equally, but for different reasons, I think. Mm-hmm. So I thought that, just the imagery, I'm glad we got like a nice piece of, I'm using air quotes here, road trip visuals between. Montage. Yeah. And those things I love. I love seeing like all of the tanks on the side of the road and the Hummers and all of that. And they're just there. And I'm sort of in Ellie's head, and I'm like, what happened here? Why are they like this? Why is everything so abandoned where it is? And you're also not seeing a lot of the like the tendrils and things like that. It's inconsistent here and there. So like, why, if there's no tendrils, why are all those tanks like on the side of the road like this? So it helps like fill in gaps of like how the world will function, but also raises other questions. And it's great because it's world building and also question building at the same time, which I love. I just love that. So the road trippy aspects of it, how it was kind of a little quieter in the beginning, a little more bonding in the beginning, and then the second half of the episode was just like action packed, but in such a great way because this was such a huge growth episode for Joel's affection for Ellie, and you can just see him in everything that he did. He was concerned for her. He made that comment in the episode about how she's just cargo. Yeah. And then every action he did from there on out just belied that and made it seem like she's much more than cargo to him, or she's becoming that way in his heart, in his head, whatever. So yeah, I loved this episode. I thought it was a great sort of like, you got character building, world building, gorgeous visuals, and then you got, some really great action and tense moments there at the end of the episode, the like first half, second half kind of thing. And no infected in this episode.
No, not at
which
all.
I thought was, I like that. I like that they're, and when they happen, they're specific and they mean something, and it's and the action that they will take with whatever infected it is that they come across. It's story important. They're not set dressing. You know what I mean? They're there for a reason. They came across them for a reason. They're going to interact with them for a reason. And I like that. So the fact that they weren't there is fine because it wouldn't have fit in with the sort of actions and the things that were going on anyway.
Hey, yeah. Did you notice anything weird about Kansas City? I mean, besides what's been going on there? There are no infected.
Well, yes, but yes, I did. It gets explained a little bit better in the next episode, obviously, but it's.
Well, no, that's what Henry says to them.
Yeah, he says, "Did you notice that they're not there?" Did you
notice? And then yeah, and it's pretty wild, man. When they cleaned them out and forced them underground, and that's why they're none up top. It's like, okay. And what did he say? Like, that's the only good thing that the Fedra guys did.
Yeah, they did one good thing, and it's interesting too because when you think about it, they've been traveling, and even when they left the Boston QZ and everything, there's still amongst like the town, like around the Boston QZ, there's still a little bit of activity outside those walls here and there, but just it was like inside Kansas City, it was like a ghost town.
Oh yeah,
which was just amazing. It was just it's so eerie and strange, and I loved that. I love that moment when Joel, when he knelt down and looked underneath, and there was that clear road ahead. And even though it was clear, it was eerie because it's like, wait, why is it clear? Like you question it that way. But that's just because we're broken because we watch all this shit. So yes, love the episode.
You say broken, I say mind expanded, whatever. It's all the same.
Or applying logic to obviously scary situations.
Yeah.
It's the people who don't see that are stupid. It's not us.
That's right.
Right. So yes, love the episode. Can't wait to talk more about more of my, the deep points. So let's do that. So first up, let's discuss the episode description, if you want to handle that, and then we'll get into our points on the episode.
All right. Well, let's do it because, this podcast is going to be so fast, people. I'm telling you. 3 hours, whew, it'll
fly by. It's like it never even happened.
That's right. It's like a dentist appointment. You'll just can't believe it's going so quickly.
Yes.
All right, so our episode description is as follows, and this again is for The Last of Us episode 1.4, Please hold to my hand. And the description is, after abandoning their truck in Kansas City, Joel and Ellie attempt to escape without drawing the attention of a vindictive rebel leader. That is your episode description.
It sure is. Yeah. So let's first discuss our writer and director. And the writer, he looks familiar. We've discussed him before.
Oh, we have. It's yet again another Craig Mazin joint. So,
well, what do you know?
Yeah, it's clearly this is his story. That. Oh God, yeah. But again, I got to tell you, I mean, the blueprint he is using, the outline, if you will, for this writing project is the video game story.
Right.
He's just sort of taking it and removing a lot of the video game stuff that happens when, you're just, killing infected or, Fedra guys or raiders or whatever. And he's filling that in with the much more dramatic, actual character and plot stuff that the video games kind of do, but not really. So, but anyway, he's our writer yet again. And like I think I pointed out last week, according to IMDb, he's listed as his credited with writing for television on all 10 episodes. So I would be very surprised if he is not the writer of any of the remaining episodes that are coming up. So, but our director this time is a new person, and it is a British gentleman named Jeremy Webb. And he actually directs the next episode as well. So, we were just kind of talking about how 4 and 5 are kind of one long continued story. So to kind of continue to foster that, the producers, the showrunners had him, with the same director do both of them. So both episodes have kind of the same feel and style and all of that, which I thought really helped in the narrative, but to really kind of connect them and make them work very well together.
I agree.
But Jeremy Webb, huge, I think he's got like over 30 television directing credits, including a little show that I think we might be familiar with entitled Fear the Walking Dead. He unfortunately directed one episode of that show. I was going to look it up and see which one, and I just
didn't care.
Do it. I'm just like, I don't care. It's unless it's like in season 1 or 2, it's terrible,
Yeah. And here's the thing, I don't judge him because he only did one. If he'd done more than that, I think I would judge. Not, you know what I mean? Like, a person's got to work,
right.
And you want to try and bring your artistry and expertise to something. So it's tough to say judge, but he went in, he did one, he saw it for what it was, and he got out.
Got the hell out of Dodge and never came back. Yeah. But when you get past that, he also directed episodes of Downton Abbey. He directed episodes of The Umbrella Academy, of the Punisher TV series with Jonathan Bernthal. And he also, if you remember, there was another show on AMC that you always hated that they would sandwich between Walking Dead and Talking Dead. He did Nosferatu.
Oh, Nosferatu.
If you remember that show.
Yeah, I never watched it. Did you?
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. It was not that great, but I did watch it. But anyway, so yeah, I kind of chuckled because I'm like, oh yeah, Diana's never watched that show and she hates it because it was always like, you're like, why am I forced to wait an hour to watch Talking Dead? I'm like, yeah, it's AMC. What are you gonna do? But anyway, yeah, you can look him up on IMDb. He has a ton of credits, and those are just a couple of the ones that jumped out at me. That he has done, and again, like I said, I thought that the way that these 2 episodes were put together was really great. I mean, it has good pacing. There are very few points. Even the slow points in the story didn't seem to drag to me. They kind of seem to be necessary exposition to help explain who are these people? Why are they so angry? Why are they after this guy? And they really worked. And there's a lot of things that they like show you in episode 4, and some of them are maybe some quick quick cuts and stuff, and then in episode 5 they actually kind of go back and they don't directly mention them, but they say, if you're paying attention, what those things were. And I really like that kind of little attention to detail. So that I thought as a director he was great. And so that is our writer and our director.
Fantastic. I love the sort of the opening section where they are they're at this gas station and they had to stop because you can't always I like that he made a good point about how gas breaks down. I'm like, yeah, it does. You'd think other zombie television shows.
Hello, Fear. Hello. We're looking in your direction. Yeah,
you can't just siphon out of a gas tank and go, yeah, we're going to go for 300 miles now.
Oh,
no.
You know it. Yeah.
No. So we've got this great little scene packet that starts in the gas station with these great montage of Ellie, like she's posing with the gun.
Oh,
she's
yeah.
practicing.
I'll
give her. Yeah, she did great, and I love that she was smart enough that she was learning about the gun. She took out the clip. She got rid of the one that was in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And then she started playing with it.
Right.
I mean, we've both seen so many shows where they like playing around and like then they get startled and bang, next thing you know they've shot something like themselves or whatever. So I liked that she was cautious and curious all at the same time. So that bodes well for down the road. So yeah, she's got this great scene. She's sort of like, and I loved that moment where she was pointing and she tried, wait, do I close my right eye or my left eye? My right eye? My left eye? What am I supposed to be doing here? It was so honest and so cool. I loved it. And then when she comes out of the gas station and she starts ribbing Joel, and then that's just a consistent thing from coming out of the gas station and he's, siphoning the gas to that first block of time in the truck before they hunker down for the night. That whole like welcome to the Joel and Ellie opposites attract road trip, which I thought was great. Between her taking out the book of puns to giving him shit about not really knowing what siphoning, like what it was. He's like, I know it works. He gets
that's all I need to know. Okay.
Yeah. It was great. And then, I mean, between finding the tape in the car, and then she's like, oh, there's something else, and pulls out the magazine, which is clearly a Gay Men's magazine.
How do they walk around with that?
It's so hilarious. And what's funny is there's a nice little nod in that scene that I hope everybody caught, which is that it's revealed, not on the show yet, there's some hints to it, but I guess it's revealed within the game, and we should get it later that Ellie is gay.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
Although it's revealed in the idea in the fact that when you get the game and you complete it, then they opens up a bonus smaller mini game, which is Ellie. And if you remember in I think episode 2, she's talking to Tess and she, asked, where'd you get bit? And she said, I went into this mall.
Oh, was it that?
And Tess is like, you mean the mall that no one should ever go into? And she's like, yeah. And she said, she goes, I went in by myself.
Yeah, she went in with other people, I bet.
And actually, the mini game is her and another girl from the school, and they sneak into the mall to look around because they're kids, and it's what happens in there. And and it's kind of very strongly suggested that at the minimum she's like bi, but
yeah,
I mean I just kind of chalked it up to she's like at this point, because this is even takes place years before, or at least a year before current Showtime. She's like 13, and so if anything, she's just like, I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out,
Right. Yeah,
But
that's true.
But they do it kind of hint that. You're right.
There's a moment when she was talking with Tess in episode 2, I think, when Tess asks the question where she's like, no one's going to come looking for you. Parents, brother, sister, boyfriend. And she was like, no, and no.
No. Yeah.
She was like, and just the tone, it was very like specific. But I also, the moment in this episode was when she's looking and she makes the comment, she's like, how do you walk around like that? She says, I'm seeing what all the fuss is about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, like, she's never been curious enough to look before. This is her first exposure to something like that. Mm-hmm. And so she hasn't sought it out because she's not interested.
It doesn't attract her. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So so I thought that was a very telling moment for her to be able to say, like, there you go. This is what all the fuss is about. Okay, fine. Although that's a really bad way to be exposed to that. I mean, anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot of, shaving and oil and I don't know. It's not very realistic what she's looking at.
You're saying that perhaps it was a little too much package?
I don't know about packaging. I'm just saying the whole look, because like the guy that was on the cover the presentation, it's all muscly and oiled and tan and
well, I mean, I can tell you that. I mean, that's kind of how I walk around the house. So I'm all muscled and oiled up and just sort of like, good morning, So, yeah.
I'm like the palest human being I know.
Cave dweller, muscled and oiled, but still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, pale people can be muscled and oiled, too.
That's right.
I suppose. Totally
possible. Yeah. Theoretically.
Possible. So she's in the midst of this whole giving Joel all kinds of shit. And I love just the moment when she asks, why are these pages stuck together? And he's like, and he's really searching. He's like, I don't know. And she immediately takes him off the hook and she's like, I'm just fucking with you. Because she knows why they are.
Oh, and she does, yeah.
It's great. I loved it. The only thing I put in my notes was the line, but that whole everything from the moment she came out of the gas station and started giving him crap about everything that was happening was so great. It gives you such a really great idea of who Ellie is and how she, how she reacts to stuff. So yeah, it was great. Love it.
I like in the in that exchange when she comes out of the bathroom and he's starting to siphon the tank, and she literally says like, we have to do this like every hour, and that's when he goes, gas breaks down and it's basically almost water now, and so it just it's not as potent, just not nearly as good. But he has that line where he's like, back in the day we'd drive 10-12 hours on one tank, you could go anywhere, and then Ellie goes, so where'd you go? And then Joel is like, pretty much nowhere. but I mean, I like that because, he kind of offers up these insights into what the old world was like.
Right.
And she is just, so, because she has no idea. He says that and she's like, oh my God, you literally could drive anywhere. So where did you go? Like, because in her mind, she's like, you must have driven everywhere. And he's just like, yeah, you never really go anywhere. And it's kind of funny. You think about it, right? I mean, we could all jump in our cars for the people that have cars or, friends that have cars. And you fill up the tank and you could drive, in several states over, right? I mean, you could, but we don't. Because, life and, stuff and I'd have to take off work and, what about the kids or whatever, you know what I mean? You just don't. And I think that's a real interesting thing that they're setting up here, that she is just so can't believe all of the things that we have now, that we had then, I should say, and how we just took it for granted and didn't really realize the opportunities that were in front of us to live in a world where there aren't things that are going to kill you. You know what I mean? So I thought that was real interesting. And then I got the no pun intended, that book That is straight out of the video game. It's awesome. There's a moment where she finds the book, and then for the rest of the game, literally you can walk up to Ellie at any time and you click one of the buttons and she'll tell you one of the bad puns in the book. It's awesome.
That's
and
hilarious.
they're just as terrible as the ones that they used in the show. So
they're so good. They're so badly good.
It runs in the genes.
I can't eat. This is so great. It's just so great.
Yeah.
It's outstanding in his field.
Yep. You dick. You read this, didn't you? And he's like, nope. Go to bed. Yep.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so this great sort of setting it up opening scene of them bonding. She's trying so hard to bond with him, and it's great because she's going at 120% and he's barely giving 35% or so.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the harder he gets to reach, the more she pushes, and you can see it. And she's just, I think she could just see behind his eyes that he wants to connect. He wants to laugh or give her crap back, because he has a little bit. He's giving little hints of it. So she wants more, and he's not ready yet. When he's ready, she'll get it. But she just keeps pushing. So she's at this high percentage, and he's like, I can't do it yet. It's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the puns are way too much.
Oh.
The very first one, he's like, oh my God, go wait in the truck.
Yeah, you can go wait in the truck. And she's like, no, I'm good. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good. So it's great because it goes from that, which is this great, they're getting close and comfortable with each other. And then it shifts to the driving, and you get these really great, the visuals. The visuals when they start driving. I put down, I love the tanks. I love the roadside gas stations, the details of that. You saw that one was a Love's station, just everything was smashed, and it was so crazy.
And there was an Arby's.
Yeah, because Love's and Arby's go hand in hand. There's one not far from my house, by the way. If you're ever interested in, as they call it, the meats, it's very close to that.
Arby's, we have the fungus.
They do. Now they have the fungus. But I included it, and so did you. But oh my God, that train bridge. It's just, you see it in the distance. You're like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, it's tragic, but it's
so
still
cool.
So cool. Yeah. It's just so beautifully done. So beautifully done.
Plus, the they go past one of the truck stops, and you just see all of the semi trailers, parked on either side of the highway, and they're just, growing over with vegetation, and it's just, and not necessarily the fungus, just like normal weeds, because they've obviously been sitting there for 20 years, It's just, it's amazing. And she points out, some big truck that's on the side of the road, and Joel's answer is they use that to clear the cars for the tanks. She's like, I want to see tanks, and he's like, you will.
Yeah.
And she's like, really? He's like, yeah, you'll see tanks, choppers, all that stuff. And sure enough, they kind of come up to that abandoned vehicle park, and there's, like you said, there are Hummers, there are, Deuce and a Half trucks, there are Bradley APCs and Abrams battle tanks, and they're all just sitting there kind of rusting out because, clearly they were abandoned because either the soldiers ran away or they all got infected. It's just, very similar to what we see in the first couple episodes of Walking Dead when, Rick comes out of the hospital, right? There's that military checkpoint where there's the tank, and then there's the helicopters and the tents and all that stuff. Now, obviously much newer because it's only been probably about 30 days, not years, but same idea. And it was. That stuff is super cool, and I think that's one of the reasons why we both love this genre as much as we do, is to see all of those visuals. It's just, it's cool. It's cool. And the train, oh my God. Even though I'm looking at it, I'm like, totally CGI. I don't care.
Yeah. But that's the reason why, like, I really was disappointed. Like, that would have been, they missed out on a couple of really very visually stunning parts of the Boston skyline. There's a couple of bridges, and they could have done, and it made me sad to see that train bridge, because I was like, oh, see, in the distance, and everyone knows it's CGI, but it still looks awesome. And I'm like, oh, they could have done that with the Zakim Bridge or the Tobin Bridge. Or
just leave your Boston talk out of this, okay?
Whatever.
Boston is so episode 1. We're on episode 5 or 4, okay?
Something like that. It was episode 2 as well, my friend.
Okay.
So yeah, so those visuals were just amazing. I just loved them. And overnight, we've got that great scene where they stop for the night. For me, there were a couple of visuals that I thought were there was both beauty and scary stuff too. I mean, obviously they have their dialogue, which is amazing, which we'll get to that. But I loved that they had her lay back and look at the stars. And it reminded me of the way they framed that shot, a lot like that first shot of episode 2, where she was laying in the fetal position there with the light streaming in. Here she is with the, she's falling asleep again with her face to the sky. I mean, she was sort of on her side in the second episode, but she's got like light from above coming down. And in this one, she's looking up at the stars. I just thought there was some consistency there that I liked. So that was beautiful. But I was really freaked out when, they show them both sort of like falling asleep. And then the camera changes an angle so that it's coming up over Ellie, and you can sort of see over her shoulder, and you see someone standing. And it was so quick after it showed them sort of, go to sleep, good night, whatever, and they both close their eyes. It's so quickly after that moment, for a hot second, I didn't know it was Joel, and I was like, oh, someone's there, and I freaked me out, man. And when I watched it the second time, even though I knew it was coming, I was like, no, I have every right to feel that way, because the way they cut it, it's supposed to give you like a feeling. He goes to sleep, he's got his hand on his gun, he made the comment about the people, which we'll get to, that you made, and I just, you're in this sort of like, you're nervous. She says stuff too, where she's like, will people find us and whatever. So there's some tension there, even though there's some joking and it's a beautiful scenery. He goes to sleep with the hand on the gun pretty much, and then you see the camera pan up and there's a figure there, and I'm like, oh, it's Joel. Okay. Just it was tough. I for a second I thought it was someone else. So
Wow, that's really interesting. I had a totally different take on that sequence.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, I took he kind of, she wants to make a fire or whatever, and he says no, and she's like, infected. He's like, tell me why, and she's like, infected, and he's like, no, it's too remote out here for them, and she's like, people, and he's like, right. And then she's like, so what are they going to do, rob us? And he's like, they'll have way more in mind than that, which, first of all, like I pointed out in last week's episode about why I would have shot Frank in the pit if I was Bill, that's why, right, is that people out there, they're going to kill you and take your stuff. That's just the way it is in the apocalypse. There's nothing you can do about it. Right. But he says that because there's certainly a lot of truth to it, and because we kind of find out in the conversations they have in the car, he was one of those people.
Yeah.
Right. He and Tess and Tommy and the people they were running with, they did lots of bad stuff. They killed lots and lots of people, it sounds like, right? I mean, didn't you get the sense that Joel's like, oh, yeah, we did a lot of things?
Absolutely. And he just didn't want to talk details, but he gave the idea that there's more to this.
Yeah. And so he knows that, yes, there are bad people out in the woods. And so he tells her that to kind of scare her into just doing what he says. But then she, like you said, she's like kind of staring up at the stars. She can't really fall asleep. And I think my take on it was he kind of felt like, okay, because he promises her that no one's going to get her and that they're going to be safe and it's going to be fine. And then he kind of feels bad that, okay, she's really freaked out right now. So he gets up to kind of stand watch.
Okay.
And so that was my take on it, that he did that. You're right, it is a very quick cut, but when I saw it, my first thought was, oh, okay, so he's just kind of up and keeping an eye on everything. But yeah, either one, I think yours is perfectly acceptable, and you're right, it is kind of startling because the way they reveal it, you're like, wait, who's that? Because we just seen Joel and he's on the ground sleeping or trying to sleep.
And he had taken his coat off.
Yeah.
So in the scene just previous, he's in and they show him on his side, and he's in the dark plaid shirt, and he's in the sleeping bag, and it's dark colors. So when it pans up and he's got his coat on, which is a lighter tan, you're like,
yeah,
because
you're like, who is that?
Yeah, visually it's wrong. Like the colors, it jarred me just for a second, and then it was fine, and then it was fine,
and everything's good.
Fine. I was fine. Okay. So
I gotta ask, were you and your Boston sensibilities deeply, deeply offended and wounded and betrayed when Ellie gets up the next morning and opens the coffee pot and smells it and goes, oh, is this crap that they served in all those Starbucks back in the Boston QZ?
No, because I don't know. I don't really like the coffee at Starbucks.
Yes, but the fact that they didn't change it to, why didn't they say the Dunkin' Donuts in Boston?
Oh, I don't know. Because I'd like to think that those are actually still running. The Starbucks probably closed down.
Uh-huh.
But that there's some fool who's like, I still have to have my Dunkin'. I mean, obviously, Ben Affleck still needs his Dunkin'.
Sure. So, yeah. Well, no, he wants to work there. That's what he wants to do.
I don't disagree with that. So I read that as like the Starbucks closed down, but Dunkin' was still available. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I made note of that line because I'm like, oh, Diana ain't gonna like that.
Oh, it didn't bother me that much. I was fine.
Everything's fine.
It's fine. Everything is all fine. All right. So they wake up. They get back on the road. I love it because he says, it's such a typical road trip thing. Mm-hmm. You woke up early this morning.
Yeah.
You can sleep if you want to. And she's like, I'm fine. I'm totally awake. And then smash cut and she's snoring.
Sound asleep, head back, rolling. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And it's great because then she slowly wakes up. Like you can see she's like becomes aware. He must have like slowed down or the shift and the truck downshifted or something. And she's like, and then that's it. They're at Kansas City. They're at this, where it looks like the highway goes, there's like an underpass that goes like under, like right near the city to sort of bypass downtown. That's what it looks like to me. And they can't get through. There's just too many cars, too many trucks. And it looks on purpose. It doesn't look like it happened by accident. It looks like they're trying to stop people from cars, trucks, whatever, from getting through in some way. That's how it felt to me, because if I lived there and you wanted to keep that road open, you would open it. It's been 20 years. You can just move stuff. So to me, it felt purposeful. And like I said, when we were talking a little bit ago, I'm like, when he bent down and looked underneath and you see that clear sailing right behind the, where everything's all sort of packed up together there. It looked very sinister. Because then it's pretty obvious, this is on purpose. Because everything behind it is clear as a bell. So then you have to start to think like, well, what does this mean? Are they watching? Are there people nearby? And he, instead of going further down and trying to figure out, like, I figured they were looking at the map. I figured they'd try and like double around the city, but they didn't. He decided to get off the highway and take local roads and then try and get back on the highway, like sort of get down to wherever the next exit was, is what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And then all hell breaks loose. Pretty much.
Again, it's kind of funny because I did not get a sinister sense from that roadblock.
Oh,
at
really?
All.
Really?
I thought that was just like the sort of the natural development of, cars running out of gas, cars getting into accidents, and the reason when he looks underneath the Sara Lee truck, which is like jackknifed, completely blocking the entrance to that underpass. To me, what he's doing is he's looking to see, okay, is it like this, all the way down, past the underpass? Is it going to be more, cars like this and it's impassable? Sure. And when he sees that, at least, as far as he can see there, it's clear. That's what convinces him, okay, we'll go into the city, we'll bypass this roadblock, and then, like you said, the first entrance we find on the expressway, we'll jump back on and we're smooth sailing. We're right back, going full speed. But no, I didn't necessarily get the sense that like either the Fedra troops or the people that killed all the Fedra troops in Kansas City did that on purpose. I took it more of, it's just one of those things. It's like when in episode 1 of Walking Dead, when Rick's going into Atlanta and the other side of the highway leading out of town is just bumper to bumper abandoned cars, and the road going into Atlanta is wide open. Know, so that's what I took it as. I didn't necessarily read it that it was intentional or that this was a purposeful roadblock or anything. I just took it as, all these people were trying to move west, and this is where they kind of crapped out. And if you remember, there's like an ambulance there.
Yes.
And the back doors of it are open, so it's like clearly there must have been an accident, and they were trying to help someone, and then the infected probably were running loose, and the next thing you know, it's a parking lot. So, but that's what I took. But yeah, they do. They instead they turn around, and I thought the same thing too. And just from my sensibilities, I'm like, I'm not going into the city. That's crazy. Not just because of people that are there, but infected are going to be in there.
Right.
So
higher concentration.
Yeah. So I was with you. I was quite surprised that they didn't look at the map and go, well, we can double back to this road that's 2 miles back, and then we can go north of Kansas City and kind of shoot up. But they didn't. You're right. Joel's like, screw it. So he drives up the exit ramp, which was kind of funny. And gets into the city, and then you're right. That's when things definitely start to go sideways.
Yeah, I think too, like what you were saying too rings true, that he saw that road was so clear, and by confirming that, he just figured, well, if it's so clear, then that means if we just go a little bit ways down and get on a little further down, like when we're in the city, then it should be smooth sailing. And I get that's what he was confirming. But yeah, to me, like, just the sinister feel that it gave. But I understand it not doing that.
You've been spoiled by 11 years of Walking Dead and 6 years of Fear the Walking Dead, and all of these movies where it's yes, you're expecting danger, you're expecting the ambush because that's what happens.
Yeah. And so they pull off the highway, and they get the ambush. So there
you go. Maybe you were correct.
Perhaps they, block that all off so that you will pull off, so that you will go down that road in some way. Yeah.
Although, you kind of get the sense that they're driving through Kansas City for a little ways before
for sure,
they run into that.
Yeah, she was getting lost, and he's like, "Don't use that. Use the inset map." She's like, "I've been in a car. This is my second day
Second
ever
time.
being in a car, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get her frustration. But I loved that moment when, as soon as the guy was like, "Help me," and Joel's like,
Buckle up.
this isn't real."
Yeah. And she's like, "Are we gonna help him?" And he's like, "No."
Safety belt. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I like there's such a good team now, and she knows that when he said that, he suspected bad things, and she had her eye out, and she saw that they were going to throw like a big rock or a TV or something.
It was a cinder block.
Oh, okay. And when they tossed it, right before they did, she knew it was coming. She saw. So I like that they're, like, in terms of team, they're working together. And then they crash because, they can't see where they're going. And when he crashes and then they start shooting at them, and he tells her, he's like, "Safety belt off now, go." Like, he's telling her, like, so that she can have something to follow. And he knows that she's smart, but she may be a little bit of a shit sometimes, but he knows that she knows he doesn't mean her harm, and he's trying to keep her safe. And so when he says to do something and do it this way and do it fast, she trusts it. And so when he says that, and he's like, he's like, "Belts off, let's go now." And when they follow the instructions too, and then they go, and it's just like action from there on in for the next, like, good 10 minutes or so. And it's just such a great scene. Especially he gets her to go through that small hole, which was great. He's like, "I can't fit through there, but you can. You need to go and be safe over there." Because she goes, and it's great because once she squeezes through, there's a whole lot of stuff that happens that you don't ever see. You just it's like you're hiding in the room, and all of this action is going on, and you can hear gunshots and yelling and things going on, and you don't know exactly what's happening, and it's happening right behind you. It's kind of scary, and you can only imagine what's happening because you've got no evidence of what's happening other than just, like, the sound and whatever. So you've got, it's almost that thing of, like, the theater of your mind is the worst one.
It's your imagination is filling in those blanks, and that's, infinitely far superior, far scarier, far, more terrifying than anything that they could actually show you. So But that sequence from when the guy's like, "Oh, help me," and then running over the spikes and crashing into the laundromat, that is an exact lift from the video game.
I love it.
The only difference, the only change that they made is that in the game you're actually in Pittsburgh, not Kansas City.
Oh, okay. So they didn't even really make it that far.
Yeah, they
okay.
Right. And again, same thing. They're driving along, and suddenly the main highway's blocked. And I think in the game, Joel decides, well, we'll have to cut through the city and then kind of get past this traffic jam, and then we'll cut back in, and then they run into the mercs or the soldiers or whoever they are, right? Those folks. And you have the shootout in the laundromat, and again, it's much more gamey. There's a lot more guys that you have to shoot and fight and all that stuff. But still, the detail of the way the truck goes into the laundromat and how it's kind of at an angle, all of that is a direct lift from the game. Which again, for me, I'm like, woo! So that was really cool.
I love too when before they saw the guy who's like, "Help me," and then the ambush happened. They're driving around, they're getting a little lost, and then she's like, "Wait, stop!" And then she's like, "Is that the QZ?"
Yeah.
She's like, "What the fuck happened to Fedra?" Because it's all like it's
gates
all open.
Yeah.
Gates open. There's it looks like there was some kind of fight. It doesn't look good.
No.
And you can immediately think like, well, shit, something bad happened here. We need to get out. And
Right.
right as they leave there, they like make a turn or whatever. And there's the dude who's like, help me. Help me. And they're like, we have to get out of here. This is bad. Everything about this is bad news. And then it just went downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that feeling too, like right after he crashed the car and they were sort of pinned down. I was like, this has a real video game feel to it, you know, single, you know, it's very single location, lots of those little things that you can sort of hide behind while you're having a shootout or a fight. You know, little cubby holes where like, oh, reach in here and get a knife that you can throw, like very video game oriented, like in those moments. And I like being able to sort of spot those when you're watching the show, like, oh, this was definitely a video game moment. Oh, this was too. Or it's inspired by like maybe a bigger video game moment. Like you said, there was in the game, there was more people involved in that ambush, you said. Yeah. But this makes it very realistic. You've got like two guys who are working that one area of the city, you know, as opposed to...
It's three. It's three. Yeah. He shoots two of them. One of them he shoots across the street, and then the other one, then that guy, the second guy outside, he comes in to the laundromat and he shoots that guy. And then Brian, the third guy, he kind of comes in. If you remember Joel's rifle, the bolt jams.
Yes.
Right. And so he's trying to clear it. And while he's doing that, Brian comes in through a side door and they end up struggling, and that's when Ellie climbs back out of her little cubby. And it's so great because first she takes out the knife, her switchblade.
Yeah, and it's her first instinct. Yeah.
And then she's like, wait a minute, I have a gun. So she puts the knife away and gets the gun out. She comes out and she, if you listen to what Brian says, or if you had the closed captioning on, when she shoots him, she obviously shoots him in the spine because he's paralyzed.
Yeah, it says I can't move my feet.
I can't move my legs. Yeah. So she didn't technically, and Joel, like you said, you didn't kill him, but you killed him.
Yes.
But and wow, what a great. I mean, first of all, again, kill them all is my motto in this situation. So I wouldn't have lost any tears over it. But wow, Brian, he was an awesome moaner, right? What a whiner! Like, no, please, we can trade, we can be friends. I'll tell everybody. It's just like, dude.
Yeah, and then mom, and you're kill him.
Yeah. And so then, I mean, the best part though is when he's desperately begging, trying to not get killed. And the response, Joel doesn't even talk to him. Joel just turns to Ellie and says, get back in the other room. You don't want to see this. And as soon as, and she's not sure, like she's looking at him, like, cause she knows what he's going to do. Right. And she's like, huh. And then when she turns around and like you said, she's going to do what he says in this because, she knows this is serious and trusts him. As soon as she turns, Brian's like, no.
He knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then and again, like you said, we don't actually see it. She climbs back in and the camera's on her and you hear him and he's like, mom. And then silence.
Yeah. And he doesn't shoot. He
uses the knife
or uses the knife.
He uses Brian's knife. Yeah. When you see Brian later on, he has like a when they bring the three corpses to Kathleen, he has like a stab wound on his chest, like by his heart. Yeah. So that's my guess is that Joel picked up his knife, which is a good knife, by the way. Yeah. And he used it. Yeah. And he's like, thank you. I'm going to use it to kill you. And he did. So, but yeah, what a hardcore scene. And again, for both of them, I mean, Joel, you kind of get the sense, he's done that before. But for Ellie, that was a hardcore scene.
Oh, yes. And the thing, too, is the layers that happened with no words. First of all, Brian got the drop on Joel, and Joel was losing. He was getting choked out, and Brian almost had him.
Yep.
And Ellie saved him. And so there's such a mixture from him when he gets up and he approaches Ellie, and before he says a word, you can see he looks down at the gun.
Mm-hmm.
He like makes a little bit of a face. He understands like the only place she could have gotten it is at Bill and Frank's.
Yeah.
So he knows that she picked up a gun there, but then he feels guilty because she had to use it to save him.
Right.
And so he can't be mad at her for having the gun, but he's also mad because she had to do this terrible thing and he knows what it's like to go through. So there's just such a range of emotions that he goes through. And I guarantee she was expecting him to be like, oh my God, I told you not to have a gun. Why did you have a gun? And he didn't.
Mm-mm.
And he was, even though he was firm, he was also unexpectedly gentle in that moment, I think, with her, when he's like, go over there, go back in there, whatever. And because he wants to shield her from this. And he also doesn't want to be angry with her for saving him.
Right.
But I think her expectations were for him to rage, and he didn't.
He did. Yeah. All he did is he kind of held his hand out for the gun.
Right. And she gave it to him right away.
And he just puts it in his, belt behind him. And then basically, because like you're right. I'm sure like all those emotions that she was expecting, he was going through them.
Yeah, he just didn't express them.
Yeah, and he's just like, look, now is not the time for me to blow up at you. We need to get out of here, because, most likely more guys are coming. And so we got to deal with this idiot and we got to move. And so, clearly this is a discussion we're going to have again, just not right now.
Yes, we're going to pause and we'll get back to this. Because there's more important things happening.
Yeah. But so anyway, so she does. When she climbs back through that wall and Brian just goes into full whiner mode. Yeah, it's just like, oh, dude.
Oh, awful.
Yeah.
That's
what happens when you go up against the Mando.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, who would? He doesn't have his armor on, but he's still pretty ruthless.
Yes.
So they get away.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this great moment. They get away. They're hiding, and they go into the building next door because obviously they know someone's going to come and see the crash and the people and whatever. They go to this building that's next door and they sort of hole up in there for a little while. But they know, like, they're watching out on the street. He's like, no one's coming yet, but they will. But they have to wait. He's waiting for trucks to stop going by. If it was dark, they wouldn't be seen. It's tough because it's daytime. So they're just sort of waiting it out and seeing. They're going to try and go to, there's a building nearby where they can get up high and sort of look out.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there and they're having this whole like sort of post conversation. And it's just awful. The whole thing is awful because Joel feels so guilty. He feels guilty. And you don't know it at the time when he's having that silent scene I was just saying, but he starts to express how guilty he feels that she had to do that. He apologizes. He's like, I didn't hear him coming. Because Brian surprised him coming through the back door and he wasn't expecting it and he should have been. And he's, and he's grateful that she saved him, but he just keeps going back to, but you shouldn't have had to, and he can't finish it. You shouldn't have, your first time. And
you're just a kid.
You're just a kid. And he just keeps going through all these things and he's having such a hard time. And he's applying all of that to Sarah. You know that he's like, I cannot imagine Sarah having to go through this. I cannot imagine, my child having to kill someone like that to try and save me. And
right.
There's just so much going on. And she is like, she reacts, she cries a little bit, she wipes her tears away, but she has this one moment where she just tries to make him feel better by saying, it wasn't my first time.
Yeah.
So he's thinking it's her first time having to kill someone, and it's not, but we don't get any more details. We just have her saying, it wasn't my first time, to try and help him feel better about this moment. So
right. Well, and then he asks her, he says, do you want to talk about it? And she goes, no, I do not.
Yes. Yeah. She has no desire to.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think about those? There's those two scenes. I mean, we've got the one in the, obviously the ambush being over, but then their sort of quiet scene together. It was, to me personally, that scene is like my favorite scene of these two episodes. There's a lot of really great emotional impact scenes in episode 4 and 5, and a lot of things that make you giggle and laugh and whatever. But in terms of Bond in that moment, it was crushing and beautiful all at once. I loved that scene so much.
Yeah, that was an amazing scene when they're in the bar, they're in the High-Low Tavern, and they're like looking out through, like the windows have newspaper covering them, and they have like little holes where they're looking out, and you see, the militia guys, Kathleen's, people are driving around in the trucks, because there is a scene where we're introduced to Kathleen, and she's interrogating Edelstein in the cell, and she's looking for someone named Henry, and we don't really know, who any of these people are or anything yet. But again, when you watch the next episode, that scene with her in the container with him makes a lot more sense. You're like, oh, okay.
For sure, yeah.
But and Edelstein. First of all, Melanie Linsky, I love her. I've loved her from 2.5 Men, and she's on this Showtime show called, I think, Yellow Jackets or Hornets or something. And I don't have Showtime, but I have heard just amazing things about this show with her and Juliette Lewis and all these really, really cool women. And it's like a present day story and a flashback story, and the flashback story is when they were in high school and they're like a soccer team, and they literally get like stranded in the mountains. And it's how they survived, or some of them survived. And of course now the present day story is how they're dealing with it as their past is getting dredged up and stuff. And it's, again, it's supposed to be really nice. So I love Melanie Linsky. The only thing about her that always freaks me out is when you see her in interviews, because she's like from New Zealand. And she has like the stereotypical New Zealand accent. It's so jarring where you're like, huh? Just said the same thing with Ellie, and that when she's a little British girl, and when you see her being interviewed and she's got the English accent, you're like, oh my god, it's just so freaky. But anyway, she's great. And then the guy who plays Edelstein is this actor named John Getz, who back in the 80s and 90s, he was one of those character actors that you see in a bunch of stuff and you never really know who his name is. And like two things that he did that I absolutely love was he was in the Jeff Goldblum movie version of The Fly. And he's the guy that Jeff Goldblum kind of like throws up on and melts his arm off, if you remember from that movie. And he also was in a movie by the Coen brothers, and it's one of their first movies called Blood Simple. And that movie is it's an awesome film noir that they made it in like 1984, 1985, right when they were starting out. And so either one of those, if you're interested, want for a good time, if you haven't seen them, check them out. But yeah, I love those two. And so we get that scene, and we kind of learn a little bit about Kathleen, and she comes out, and they found the 3 dead guys, and she's convinced that whoever this is working with this Henry character who we haven't met yet. And so she orders everybody to like search door to door. And so when we cut to the scene in the bar, you see the vehicles driving around, and you see them, and they've got the Rams, and they're kicking in doors, and they're literally searching everywhere through the town. And yeah, you're right. You get this wonderful scene where Joel's trying to explain that it's his fault that she had to shoot that guy, and that she should never have to do that because she's a kid, and kids shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff, and it was his fault because he's supposed to protect her and all this stuff. And then when they kind of get that out of the way, and he brings up the gun and everything, then I thought was great is that he kind of gives her the 5-minute how to hold the gun class.
Yes. That was
you
great.
know? Yeah. Which again, based on his reaction to her getting a gun in the episodes before this, you would think he would like not give it back to her, right?
Yeah.
That he's just gonna be like, no, you don't get this, okay? You're a kid. And instead, he's like, nope, you know what? It's better that you know how to use it right.
Yes.
And have one. And so he does. And he, show me your grip. And then he, has her put the other hand on and lock the thumbs. And then you remember when he grabs the gun and tries to pull it out of her hand and it won't move. Yeah. And she kind of giggles and he's like, see, and you're right. I thought that was just a really great, quiet little moment, a nice little like, change of pace, like chance to catch your breath. Right, because we just had that intense scene killing Brian and the shootout and the ambush, and now we kind of get this, moment before they're gonna go again. So yeah, I loved all of that stuff. I thought it was really well done, and the two of them were just so good together that it really worked.
Yeah, every time we talk about a scene that we love, I mean, it really just always comes back to their chemistry and their abilities as actors is just so fantastic in these moments, in these scenes. These are great written scenes. These are great, great settings, great moments, and then the life that they're breathing into these moments is just amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that whole other sort of B story of, Catherine is the person who Kathleen, who is one of the Kansas City people, and we're not really sure, we don't know a lot about her yet. We just know she's connected to the people that were killed. She's trying to get information from this guy and she's trying to get him to tell her about this Henry person. And then she makes a comment later about, when they're searching door to door, they find a little hideaway, because they're looking door to door for, she's calling it, the people that crashed and shot Brian. But obviously they're also looking for signs of this Henry person.
Well, and she's convinced that, like, she says, like, well, if Henry had a radio, he might have called them in. Because when Percy, which is the guy with the beard, who's kind of like her number one, her lieutenant, he comes in and he says, outsiders, not Fedra, and they're well armed and supplied. They could be mercs, is what he says.
Yeah.
And again, they don't really necessarily know that there's a little girl. They just know that there were a couple of people in the truck. Yes. And she immediately jumps to, well, Henry probably called them to come get him. And so she's connected the two. And so she's like, we got to find him. So she orders all that stuff. But yeah, go ahead.
So within the framework of them doing the door-to-door search, she's like, any sign? He says no, her top guy there. And he's like, but there's this, you need to come see something.
Yeah.
So he come and shows her there's this like hideaway that's like really all the way up in like an attic it's like an attic space.
It's straight out of Anne Frank.
Yeah, totally. With like a hidden staircase and all this other stuff. And they get up there and you can see there's sleeping bags and empty food cans. So someone's been up here, and she sees, she sees food stores, and she's like, well, one thing's for sure, we have to tighten our security around our food stores because it looks like they're out. And she made a comment where she says, Henry won't let Sam go hungry. And you're like, oh, great. So we're looking for Henry, but there's some guy named Sam with him too. And who are these people? And we as watchers know that they have no connection to Joel and Ellie. So we know they're not working together, but this Kathleen gal doesn't know that. So you're like, well, what did this Henry dude do? And we don't know who Kathleen is. We don't know her connection to Kansas City. Like, why is she in charge? What has happened here? Because they don't look like the Fedra soldiers. There's no uniforms, no nothing. And we did have that moment earlier in the episode where they're like, oh my God, the QZ and the gates are open and where's Fedra and whatever. So, are they residents? Are they other mercenaries that came in and took over the place? We don't know. There's a lot of questions without knowing who they are. We just know that obviously this Henry character is very important to her. We just don't know why. So they're doing their search of the city, and Joel and Ellie eventually make it over to this tall building that's nearby. And the reasoning is they want to be able to look from high up and plan out how they're going to get out of the downtown area, because they don't know this city. They've got to be able to look at the layout and make a plan. So they go as far up as they can. It's like 44 flights or something total in the building. And Joel basically says, we'll go until I can't go anymore.
Yep.
And then we'll stop. Which sounds about right, because you'll get a high enough view. Why go all the way to the top if you don't need to? And so they made it to like 35, and he sits, and she's like, don't sit, like get up off your ass, and she makes him get up, and he's like begrudgingly like, oh my God. They find a little hideout. It's hard to tell. It looks like it's an office. It's not an apartment building. It's an office building.
That's what I got. Yeah.
Yeah. And but there was some kind of couch or seating area, because Ellie finds some cushions, and she lays out some cushions on the floor for them to sleep on. And he, because he's trying to be careful, he breaks a window that has a bunch of glass in it, and then he starts, he got it into like this bucket, and he starts shaking it onto the floor, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't want someone to sneak up. And she's like, oh, got it, crunch, crunch, crunch. And I thought that was adorable. So it's a good little like security measure, which I thought was great. Nice consistency there, trying to keep themselves safe. And then they have like the funniest scene that's ever happened in this show so far. And it's so great and so lighthearted. And when he comes back when they just start laughing at that terrible pun she tells, and it's amazing. Like when he starts to giggle and they can't stop, and I loved it. I loved everything about that scene. How about you?
Oh yeah. It was again, another, like you said, another kind of a begrudging bonding moment from Joel's point of view. That this horrible pun that, he is like, oh my God, that's so bad. And then he just, it's like one of those things where, you just start laughing.
Yeah.
And almost kind of like, you're like in church, and you can't laugh because, you're in church, but that makes it that much harder not to laugh. And
yes.
and that's kind of the moment that he's had, and he tries and then he just lets it go, and they both just kind of sit there and giggle like idiots for a few minutes, and again, it's a wonderful little scene that you're like, okay, the future is not quite so bleak, and then it immediately cuts to her going, Joel, get up, and he opens his eyes, and that's when these two people that are standing over them holding guns to their heads.
Yeah, and it's great too, because it's like you got one person with the gun to Ellie's head, and then Joel turns and looks, and it's a little kid. The other person is a little kid, and he's like dressed like a superhero somehow.
And he's got the orange across his eyes.
Yeah, and it connects up with when Kathleen was shown like that little hideaway where there was the food and the sleeping bags. There was like drawings. There was like kid drawings, and some of it was like of superheroes and stuff like that. So then you're like, oh, well, this must be one of them is Henry and one of them is Sam, and we just don't know who's who. Like for those that don't know the game, no, go ahead.
I say the majority of the drawings that she finds are of two guys.
Yeah.
Like two like Superman kind of guys, but they're both, African American skin color. skin
Yeah.
tone. But
Yeah.
it's always two. And again, once you watch episode 5, that scene makes a lot more sense because Catherine knows that Henry and Sam are brothers, and so as soon as she sees all that, she knows this was their hideout.
Yeah, she does.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great ending to the whole episode. Here's this little kid, and when Joel turns and looks at him, he reacts like very slowly, and he just brings his finger up to his lips to shush him, and then black. That's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Great, just a great like you're like, who are these people? Damn it, I'll have to wait till next week. I mean, we were catching up, so really I wrote down some notes and then watched the next episode as soon as I could.
Wow.
But I understand your pain, people. We had to sort of wait if you didn't know who these people were. Wow. Anything else from episode 4 that we didn't cover that you want to try and make sure we hit?
What now?
I said before we move along.
Yeah, before we move along, yeah. Well, because we're only an hour and 15 minutes in, so we got time.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Actually, there's that kind of ominous scene after Kathleen and Percy are looking at their hideout.
Yep.
They come out of there and they like hear a noise coming from the basement of that building. And they go into the building, and like the basement floor, it's all cracked and almost like a sinkhole is forming. And then like it starts to like ripple, like something's underneath it. Yeah. And you're like, what is that? And obviously, I mean, we've seen episode 5, we know what it is, but at the time you're like, oh my God, what the hell is that? And clearly they're like, Kathleen is like, oh, fork, and they get the hell out of there. So they clearly are like, have ideas of what it could be. Yeah. And and Percy's like, what are we going to do? And she's like, well, let's just keep looking for these guys. We'll just cordon off the building. And he's like, what?
And she's like, one bad thing at a time, really.
Yeah. She's like, we got to focus on one thing at a time. Right. But I thought that scene was very, again, you're just like, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's whatever it is. It's not good, but what is it? So that I thought was a cool little moment. And then one of the things that I noticed, and it's a very small thing, but it just adds to the kind of the continuity and the detail that they're putting into this show, is that when they start driving through Kansas City, and you kind of get that scene where she's looking at the wrong map, and he's kind of yelling at her to find a way, and he's like, I can't believe we got turned around and we don't know where the expressway is. They drive by a cinema, and on the marquee, the 2 movies that were playing in Kansas City are Underworld and Matchstick Men. And if you look up those 2 movies, they both came out in 2003.
Oh my goodness.
So how about that? I thought that was a cool little...
That's really well done.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fucking cool. So,
yes.
And then, my final note is that, it's Henry and Sam from the game, which, again, the gameplay, the game storyline is so far what the show is. They start in Boston, they get to the state house, the Capitol building. Tess dies. Then the 2 are by themselves. The first place they go is Bill and Frank's, and they get a truck at Bill and Frank's. Although the difference is that Bill is still alive and remains alive. He is still in the town when they leave. Okay. Whereas they're already dead in the show. Then they drive, and again here they make them go to Kansas City, but in the game they go to Pittsburgh. They get ambushed. They avoid the militia guys. Big difference is like the Kathleen character and all of the development of their story is that's all added for the TV show. In the game, most of the people that you come up against are just these nameless, faceless bad guys.
Okay.
That you just got to kill, you got to shoot, get past, whatever. The big thing in the game is that they only have one vehicle, and it's like they actually show it in the show. It's in there, but it's this Hummer that has a like a machine gun mounted on the top.
Okay.
And in the game, it's like you can't destroy it. You just have to avoid it, basically. And so it's driving around the streets, and you're kind of running in and out of the buildings trying to avoid it. So that's kind of the difference there. But again, after you do that for a while, then you run into Henry and Sam. And again, all of the backstory that they concoct for the show is not in the game. I think they say Henry and Sam was with a bigger group, and they're the only two that are left, and they need Joel and Ellie's help to get out because, again, he knows a way to get out, but he can't do it by himself, and so that's why that they kind of team up. So again, so far they're following the plot of the game fairly closely, which has been really cool to see a lot of those moments come to life as someone that's experienced it as the gamer. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, so good. All right. Well, if that's all for episode 4, let's jump into another 3 hours of chat. Let's talk about episode 5.
That's good. That's good.
Title of the episode is Endure and Survive.
Okay, no, you have to say it the way Ellie did. Endure and survive.
Yes. And you went first last time?
Yes, I did. So it's your turn.
Perfect. So I will go first then. I really loved this episode. And again, I feel like this was like the last episode where you had like the first half was world building and details and getting to know each other, and then the second half was action and tight and lots of stuff going on and keeping track of all that. And then I feel like this was sort of the other way around. The first half was all this stuff, there was all this action to sort of follow, and then they sort of at the end, like for the last 10-15 minutes, it like sort of slowed down a little bit, and people getting to know each other, some couple of really great affecting scenes, a couple of very destroy your brain scenes. I really just I don't know what else to say when I love these episodes. Like what else do you say other than this episode was amazing? I can't come up with any other superlatives. I thought there were a couple of really great moments that I was like, yeah, that is definitely a video game moment. And then later, like some of I'm curious to find out what was and wasn't video game moments for some of the more emotional scenes. And I'm just curious all around about how this compares to the video game for sure. But yeah, I loved it like wholeheartedly. It was just such a great episode. And again, more at the end of it with, these two characters they're the centerpiece of the show. And their relationship is what it's all about. It was interesting. This was another primer in, this is not the show I'm used to. I'm used to this big ensemble zombie show with 5,000 characters that they never kill. And that just did not happen. Like they just introduced these two people in this last episode and they were dead in this one. And
everybody they introduced in the last episode is dead.
Was dead in this one. So it's like, we went from one end of the spectrum with one show to now we're on this one, which is, it was an interesting reminder that this is not The Walking Dead. And this is the number one reason, because this is a show of two. And there will be people who are going to come and go. I don't know about characters that may stay down the road. I don't know. All I know is that right now it's a show about two people, and people come in and then they come right back out again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I really, really, really liked it. How about you? Episode 5.
Yeah, it was, I mean, wow. I mean, that set piece action sequence out in the street was incredible and tense
Unbelievable.
and scary, and you know um, just to see the bloater climb out of the hole.
I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
Other people were like, "Oh, great, they had a bloater." I'm like, because I didn't play the game, so I'm like,
Yeah.
"A what?"
What? Oh
But
yeah.
yes, it makes sense.
The only difference in the game, the bloater like shoots spores out of its head, and there it's kind of like a mortar almost, or artillery. Like it'll shoot it and it'll like arc, and it'll hit the ground. And if you happen to be standing in the radius when it hits the ground, you take damage. So you have to constantly be running, and you don't want to, if it gets up to you, it'll just rip you to shreds like it did to poor Percy.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to run around and shoot at it, and then run around a little more and shoot at it. And they're pain in the ass. They're terrible. You don't want to face them. But the thing I thought was so cool about it was that was a real guy in a suit.
Yes.
That was not CGI. They actually made that bloater suit, which made it that much cooler.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that was amazing. And again, it was gut wrenching, in terms of the way it ends. Although, again, I kind of knew what was going to happen because I played the game, and the ending in the game is, we'll get to it, is fairly identical to what we see in the show. So
Okay.
So I want you like I said, when we were talking about episode 4. When I see something from the game that I'm like, oh, they like when they mentioned Henry, and then when she saw the drawings and stuff, and there were 2 of them, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is going to be Henry and Sam. And then my first thought is, I wonder if they're going to kill them the way they go in the game. That
Right.
was my thought, and of course they do. And so yeah, it was unbelievable, and again, same director, same writer, obviously, like we said last time, but just super tight. The editing's great, the pace is great, and he's really good at knowing when to step on the gas. Like if you watch that action scene out on the street, in that when Joel takes out the sniper, and then of course all the vehicles show up. The cuts are he kind of lets the camera linger a little bit on either Kathleen talking or to Sam or Henry, talking when they're hiding, by the car, and it's slower and more deliberately paced. And then of course he stands up, and then she's going to kill him, and then the truck falls into the sinkhole, right? And then oh yeah, I mean, oh my God. And then when you hear, and you immediately you're like, uh-oh, here they come. You know what I mean? And when the infected come, flying out of that sinkhole, then the cutting picks up, and it's, suddenly, it deliberately just propels it through, and it's much more intense. And you're just like, holy crap, because suddenly they're just being overwhelmed, and the way that they edit it, you kind of get the sense of it. You're overwhelmed. They're coming from everywhere. What are we gonna do? And I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really well done. So again, great episode, and these 2, great story.
Yes, great like we were saying at the beginning, they're connected, so it's such a great continuation of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so before we get into our points, let's do episode description as well. So if you want to do that, and then we're going to jump right in.
All right, now that the episode description has been added.
Shut up.
I saw you stalling there, and I'm
listen,
I'm looking
mid-show editing. It happens.
It does, but you're giving your thoughts, and I'm looking at the episode description, and all it says is endure and survive, and I'm like, wow, I know their descriptions are brief, but anyway, you covered well. So
I did.
If I hadn't brought it up, no one would have known, but that's just not my style.
No.
So we are on The Last of Us episode 1.5, and again, it is endure and survive. And the description is as follows. While attempting to evade the rebels, and I don't know if rebels is the right word, but that's what we got, Joel and Ellie cross paths with the most wanted man in Kansas City, and Kathleen continues her hunt. And that is the episode description.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can call them rebels. They're, I think, because we find out in this episode that it's a fairly new thing.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, the fall of the Fedra people, it was what they say, it was only about 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
Yeah, 10 days ago. I think I'm pretty comfortable with it's exactly the same writer and director, and we literally already talked about them, so I feel like we can skip over.
Yeah,
that.
we can. Yeah. Just for
in the
shits
interest
and,
of time.
for shirts and giggles, it's Craig Mazin again as the writer, and Jeremy Webb is the director. So yeah.
Again. Yeah, I liked that the episode started out with, like, we're on the other side of the whatever the uprising was that happened, and the very first thing we have is they're still sort of rounding up the Fedra people, and they're literally chanting "Fuck you, Fedra!" And I was oh, okay, well, that's how this episode is going to start. So I just put that down in my notes. It was my very first feeling. I was like, wow, that's what happened. So we start off with this explanation of did they do like I can't remember, was there a title thing that said 10 days ago or something?
No, it starts and they're like celebrating, and the guy's shooting the flares up into the air,
right? And
then you see the vehicles driving around, and I love that the one scoop has the word "run" spray painted on it.
Yes.
and I think like one of the trucks says like "We the People" on it, which I thought was interesting. And then you kind of get this long shot, almost like the camera's like in the middle of all of these people, and they're all killing various Fedra soldier guys in different ways. And I mean, oh my God, like there's like a woman, and she like puts like one of those zip ties around a dude's neck, you know, and then you see another one, and they shoot some guy, and then you kind of get that shot of the Fedra insignia on a wall, and in the reflection you can see they're hanging a Fedra soldier in the reflection. I mean it's nasty, you know, violence. I mean, it is definitely a revolution.
Yes.
And again, as we find out when we finally, you know, learn from Henry, you know, that the Fedra people there, you know, they were, you know, these horrific people that raped and murdered and, you know, really oppressed the people in that QZ. And so it's kind of like you reap what you sow, you know. And doesn't Henry say you treat people like that, if you give them an opportunity, they're going to give it right back to you. And that's what, you know, you get the idea that there are no living Fedra people in Kansas City. They've all been killed.
Yeah, that certainly felt like that for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because if you contrast that, when Henry tells that story down the road, down the piece a little bit, and you get like that backstory, you compare it with the Fedra soldiers that you saw in Boston, and they seemed, they had their bit of ruthlessness, but I think it was job specific. Like, I'm thinking of the one soldier that had to talk to the little boy. You know, obviously her job is to evaluate people and then decide whether or not we kill them, which is pretty cold, but it's also, it keeps them safe. You know what I mean? Like they put, if someone's infected, they're going to show the signs eventually. And it's like trying to figure out, you know, they've got to get rid of them pretty soon. But the guy that was giving out like the job stuff, it looked like, and I'm not excusing that. I'm sure that they weren't fantastic, but it looked like things were running pretty regularly in the Boston QZ. To a degree, you know, as it sounded like it was a lot more
oppressive.
Violence. Oppressive and violent. For sure.
Yeah, the Fedra people that we got to see in the Boston QZ were much more kind of like that, you know, emotionless bureaucratic kind of leadership where
Yes.
they're not actively trying to kill you. They just don't really care.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. No empathy and no caring.
Yeah, it's because it's like, look, dude, you want to clean in the sewers because you get paid more? Fine, I don't care. You know what I mean? That's how that guy was. And like that woman that was dealing with the little kid, she was actually very compassionate. And if you think about it, it's not like they took that kid out and shot him or her. I don't think we ever determined if it was a boy or a girl, but they inject the kid with something. And
that's obviously what must have killed them.
Yeah, so I mean, they were, and she's telling, the kid, oh, we're gonna take you somewhere, and we're gonna give you, ice cream, and you're gonna eat and get a full meal, and there's all kinds of toys that you can play with. Would you like that? So she was, again, lying, but she was at least trying to make the kid feel good before, they. So again, and you're right. That attitude was clearly not being, given off by the Kansas City Fedra people. And they were so notoriously bad that even Joel had heard the rumors.
Right.
All the way in Boston. Right.
Yeah.
So that just tells you how, bad it must have been, that they spawned a rebellion that Kathleen's brother was in charge of, and then she took over when he got ratted out by Henry. So yeah. Oh yeah. That opening scene when they're celebrating. First of all, it reminded me a lot of the January 6th stuff.
Yes.
Where you have a lot of these people, and if you noticed, some of them were wearing like the helmets of the Fedra guys, and had the vests and the shields and kind of a lot of the accoutrements that they picked up from them, and just the way that they were kind of chanting and running around. And so I'm sure that a lot of that imagery was inspired by what we saw going on January 6th, which again hits a little close to home, but
yeah.
That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
And
the best art reflects your society. You know what I mean?
Oh
and
God.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And so I thought that was a really powerful opening because you see all of this violence. And again, we don't really have a context for it yet. We don't know. We know that there was a rebellion. We know that those people that Kathleen led took over, but we don't know why. We don't know what was the reasoning. And then when you see that opening, and like I said, it's just so many people are not just killing other people, but they're like torturing and killing and really like painfully kill. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like there's a lot of hate.
Yes.
In that opening scene, and it's very powerful because you're like, holy crap, what is going? What? First of all, why are they doing this? What did the people that are being killed do to these people to make these people do this to those people? So you're just like, whoa, and
lots of questions.
And what a way to open up the story, because again, we had kind of ended on a cliffhanger. Yeah. And the last one, right? And it's like we don't start with Joel and the gun in his face. We start with this, totally different scene. You're like, huh? And it was amazing. I thought it was an incredible opening.
Yeah, agreed. And it's like you said, it's interesting how we even though we're getting answers, there's still some more questions of stuff. But it's obvious that whatever brutality was put upon them, they are visiting upon others.
Oh, yeah.
Just that moment when Kathleen comes into that little cell and puts the chair down and sits so like prim and proper. Mm-hmm. Did she not scare the shit out of you?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, and when she says like, you guys will have a trial and like you're going to be guilty, so don't worry about that. She's like, but then, you'll do a little time and that's it. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, I don't believe a word of what you're saying. You're going to ice all those people as soon as possible. When we didn't really talk about it in episode 4, but she has that scene with Edelstein with the doctor.
Yep.
And he swears he doesn't know where Henry is. She doesn't really believe him. And he then, does this emotional thing of like, I was your doctor. Like, I delivered you. I held you as a baby in my hand. You know what I mean? And you get the sense that he was like the family doctor, right?
Yeah.
And then she gets called away because they bring the 3 dead guys, including Brian,
Yep.
you know, they found them. So she's out there and she's like, you know, go find them, and orders everybody to go do that. And what does she do then? She goes back into the cells and she says, open it up. And the guy opens it up and she just walks over there, pulls her gun out, and, you know, kills Edelstein like that.
Yeah.
Bang. And again, we don't see it. She shoots off screen, but
Right.
you know exactly what she did. And so you kind of get a sense right there of like, okay, this girl, cold-blooded. And so then when you get the flashback of her talking to the inmate, to the prisoners, and she's saying, you know, oh, no, you'll be fine. It's just like, no, you're not going to be fine. This is the opposite of fine.
Yeah. I mean, and he gives up some information. He knows, he gives up that he knows Henry was being helped by Edelstein and doesn't know where they're hiding. She doesn't believe them. And she's like, okay, fine, whatever, trial, whatever. And when she steps out, and then Percy is like, are they going to get a trial? And she's like, no. She's like, go ahead and take care of them or whatever. And then all of these other soldiers, they all file in there, and you can hear people start to moan and groan and, oh no, oh my God, or whatever. And again, like other things, you don't see it. But now when you know that they killed all of them, you included it in your notes here, which I thought was great, is that ties right into in episode 4 when Joel and Ellie were first driving around. They go past this alleyway and the camera centers on, there's like a pile of bodies that still has like a small wisp of smoke coming off.
Oh yeah, all
so
charred,
it's fairly recent. Yeah, they're all charred and whatever. So there was some big blaze there, but yeah, because she says, you know, when she was like, no, kill them all. She's like, and then burn them after. It's easier.
Yeah, it's easier, right? And so I love that they, again, it's very quick. They don't dwell on it, but if you're watching and you're paying attention, it fills in that moment from, oh, okay, because they make a point. The director makes a point of showing you that burned pile of corpses.
Yeah.
And they never go back to it in episode 4. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, I wonder what that was about. You know, is he just trying to show that the city's abandoned and,
you know, like give you like an eerie feeling like, oh God, what's that all about? But the fact that they tied it back up.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And you're right. When she tells Percy to kill him and all those soldiers go in there and they're like, you know, taking the safeties off their guns and stuff. And then you hear the people in there go, ah! I mean, oh my God, it's chilling.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I love that, like, she's so matter of fact about it that she's like, yeah, just get rid of them and burn them all. It's so much easier. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm done with that. What's the next thing we got to cover? Because I got a busy day here, people.
Well, you know, Kathleen clearly is, like, her mentality, as warped as it is all about what she considers justice.
Yes.
And so she and it's cold and emotionless justice. And that is, you know, if you broke the law in her eyes, then, you know, you need to be punished. And, you know, the punishments, I think, pretty much are death, you know, for them, for the big laws. And, you know, she's not going to waste any time feeling bad for you because you broke the rules.
Right.
You know, and so I love it too when she was like, I need to know, you know, where Henry is, and no one's saying anything, and she goes, you're informers. Inform. Yeah.
This is what you were doing, so you might as well continue to do it.
Hello. And then when the guy finally fesses up, you know, what is her response to that? Because he's almost like, so, you know, are we good to go? And she's like, you know, you're all forking rats. Yeah. You know, like the disdain, like the disgust in her voice, you know, in her tone of this, like, ugh, you know, you guys, you know, you're the worst kind of people, and that you didn't actually take action yourself. You just ratted out everybody else. Yeah. To have stuff done to that. I mean, it's like, of course we're going to kill you because you guys don't deserve anything. You know, I mean, yeah, it was again, a really cool scene that it in a way of the way that they reveal that information. It's not expo dumpy, but it tells you so much about what's going on. Oh yeah. And then when Henry comes along and he kind of fills in the other side of the coin there
Yeah.
about why he did what he did. And, again, Henry, when you find out why, he's like the most wanted man in Kansas City, although Joel is a pretty close number 2 right now. His reasons, I think all of us are like, I might make that same call myself.
Yeah. 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 You humanize it to that point where it's like, I don't know if I'd rat out my neighbor, and you're like, oh, but would I do that if it meant, being able to get the right kind of drugs for Sam,
Yeah, for Sam. I mean, think of anybody that, you are that close to, whether it's a brother or sister or a mother or father or a, husband, wife, whatever, right? Wouldn't you do anything to save them?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah. And again, Henry makes no bones about it. He's like, no, I am a bad guy because I did a bad guy thing. I mean, he knows, that he ultimately is probably going to hell because of what he did. But he's like, look, my brother's alive.
Yeah.
So,
if I could go back, you get the idea that he accepts that he did a terrible, terrible thing. And if he had to do it all over again, he would still do
it.
Thing.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, what kind of Sophie's Choice is that? Your brother or some other guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, they don't really go into detail, but I in my mind, I kind of filled in the blanks of like, he knew his brother needed the drug to fight the leukemia, and the Fedra guys had it. And you just know that he tried every way possible to get that drug.
Yeah.
And every time they're like, nope, it's not good enough. Nope, it's not good enough. You got to bring, like you said, you got to give us something big.
Yeah.
And literally, I'm sure Sam was getting worse and worse and worse. And so finally he's like, I'm going to do it. I don't have a choice. So again, it's a horrible thing, but I don't, and Joel even says it, like he's like, I shouldn't have come down on you so hard because I don't know your situation.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So
a little bit. We get this great, like, sort of establishing Kathleen scene as our opener, and it sort of put off what, like you said, what would be the next thing, since we were left with who we come to find out is Sam, pointing his gun at Joel. And then our very next thing we see is all this backstory on Kathleen and the, their uprising, etc. And then we jump, once that's all taken care of, then we jump right back into where we left off. And
well, no, I think don't they continue the flashback, and we get Henry and Sam, and they go into the hiding place, and Edelstein's up there.
Oh yeah.
And they take out the crayons, and
it catches you all the way up to this.
Yeah. So we go through all that. So then all that stuff makes a lot more sense to us.
Yes, we see it on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're right. Then it jumps back to the present.
Yeah.
Where
it's funny because you are seeing when they show the whole progression of Henry and Sam leave that place, and they almost made it out the door right as Joel and Ellie's truck crashed, because they were literally just right across the street in that attic, the one that they find after the fact. And they watch the whole thing, and he sees Joel fighting these guys and shooting them. When I rewatched episode 4, I was really hoping that there'd be like a little Easter egg, and it might be there if you slow it down. I was really hoping that when they showed like the open, like from Joel's perspective, looking out of that area toward the street and across to that building that's across from them, I was really hoping that in that filming, someone had inserted a little Henry head watching through the window. Right. And I couldn't see one, but I wonder if it's there, if it's slowed down. I just haven't tried that yet. But I when I watched it again, I was looking for it. I was hoping that it would be there, but I didn't see anything obvious so far. But
yeah, I did the same thing, and I don't see it either. But they don't give you the greatest look at the buildings around where, because Joel is so far into that laundromat.
So you don't get a good view.
Yeah, you really don't. So, but I did the same thing. I'm like, I wonder if he's looking, because he almost gets the sense that Joel sees him. Because the way he ducks down, right?
Yes.
You know, when after Joel shoots the second guy.
Right.
And so, yeah, I was wondering that too. But I again, maybe there's an eagle-eyed listener out there that, you know, can tell us exactly when to freeze frame our show so we can see him. But it would be cool if he's in there, but I didn't see him. So
I love that manner of telling a story when you can sort of backtrack and tell a story again from a different perspective. It reminds me a lot of the devices that were used in Black Summer when they would, you know, show those different attacks and the different things, you know, like that the attack that happened right there on the street there. We saw it from like 4 different angles in different episodes, different people involved. And it, every time it told the story, you just saw it from a different angle, from a different person's perspective. And I like when that happens. So I really enjoyed that's some of those like little bits there with Henry that sort of helped that story align right up with Joel and Ellie, all the way up until he knew that they were going to go up up into that tall building, because that's what he would do,
right?
You know, and so when Joel and Ellie wake up, and the very first things that he tries to say is he's like, okay, no one's going to get hurt here. We want you to help us. Like when he's trying to explain, you help us, we'll help you. And Joel is not having it in the beginning. He's like,
I don't like his tone.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, sure, we'll help you. He's like, I'm not sure your tone says so.
And Ellie's like, no, he sounds like an asshole all the time.
All the time. And then he says something else, and she's like, Joel,
yeah.
Like he's not making it better. And like Ellie, of course, it's not an innocence, but she does see like the good in people.
Oh, so, yeah. She's ready to trust them like that.
Of course. And Joel is far more, you know, they fall into those stereotypical roles where he's just far more not willing because he's just got too much experience. He knows too much, you know. Are we going to help that guy? No, put on your seatbelt. He's that guy. You're not going to help the guy.
He's way too worldly. He's got way too many years of experience of, you know what, it never ends well. So no. Yeah.
9 times out of 10, that person on the street that's asking for help is someone trying to ambush you. And look, I was right.
Yeah, right. I was right. They're going to kill you and take your stuff. People, this is not difficult.
He doesn't want to be right. He just is because of experience, you know. Right. And I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. So they commence to telling each other about plans and trying to, basically it boils down to Henry's like, listen, you need to get out of the city. I know how to get out of the city and I can help you. And I'm not great at the whole fighting thing, so we can sort of exchange. Like, if you help keep us safe, I can help you get out of the city.
Yeah. And keep in mind, neither of their guns have any bullets.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen when he made that. He's like, 2 guns without bullets in them. And I really wish they had shown like Joel going, son of a bitch.
Like, damn it. Well, you know, to be fair, when Sam is pointing the gun at him, it's a revolver. Yeah. And, you know, the way that they light it, the light behind Sam, you can see that there aren't even empty casings in the chambers. I mean, they're all empty. So yeah, I suppose there could be one in the barrel because you can't see that, but the ones on the rest of them around that are all, you can see right through. It's like, okay, there's, you know, at best there's 1 bullet in there, but most likely not. But and which, by the way, that was Edelstein's gun.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Remember, he had one and he's like, it's out of bullets, and then he says, you know, remember, even back then, Frank's like, I'm going to take the tunnels. That's how we're going to get out. And Edelstein's like, geez, you know, why don't you just save yourself the trouble and kill yourself now?
Yeah.
So, you know, he's poo-pooing that plan even then, you know. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. But then they come up with the tunnels idea. and he gives them like a rudimentary drawing, and he's like, listen, if we do that, we'll get here, which will get us right outside of the limits of where they sort of patrol pretty much. And then there'll be like a little subdivision, like a little a residential area, and then we're very close to he's like, there's like a pedestrian bridge, and then we'll be out of there.
Yeah.
And so they trust him, and they end up going down into the tunnels.
But before that, this is where he points out that, he's like, he asked them, did you notice anything weird about Kansas City other than, what the Fedra guys are all dead and all that? And it's revealed that the Fedra guys drove all the infected in Kansas City underground.
Yes.
And like 15 years ago. And he's like, he's telling, this is, he's so proud of himself. He's like, this is why going into the tunnels is a good idea, because Kathleen's people won't go down there. and Joel's like,
why is this a good idea?
Yeah, right. And then he's like, but I know something that they don't. And there's a Fedra guy that I dealt with that told me that the tunnels are empty, that the infected, the ghouls aren't down there. And it's so great because Joel's like, when did you hear this? And he's like 3 years ago. And Joel's like looking up at the sky like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he's like, this all sounds terrible.
Well, and I wrote down the line because Joel's like, that's your great plan. And Henry's like, no, that's my diciest fork plan. But it's the only one we got.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's inconsistent information, but it's the only thing they got. And at least if you had to face a few infected, it's not like they're going to shoot you with guns.
Yeah.
If you put down a few of them, you can sort of put them down and continue to move on,
And that's how he explains it to Joel. He said, if there's the odd one or two, you can deal with them.
Yeah.
Because remember, he was like super impressed that when he finds out that Ellie and Joel killed clickers.
Yes.
He's like, because then that's the first time we actually hear the word clicker. He's like, you guys killed clickers? And she's like, yeah, 2 of them. And he's like, see, you're perfect for this plan. So he is super impressed with them.
Yes.
And also seeing Joel in the shootout too. He's like, all right, this guy knows how to handle himself. So
exactly.
So he's like, basically the exchange is, I have the knowledge to make the escape work. You've got the brute force and the firepower to protect us while we're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Madonna. I've got the moves, baby. You've got the motion. If we got together, we'd be causing a commotion. Am I wrong?
It's kind of like I've got the brains, you've got the brawn.
Right.
Now let's make lots of money.
Right. There's no money to be made, and but they are certainly going to cause a commotion. That's for sure.
They're going to cause a lot of commotion.
Oh yeah.
She's going on tour again.
Oh, I know. I follow the social medias.
Okay.
So the first thing they really encounter, they're walking around, and it's it seems pretty clear. So far, so good. Knock wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they come upon this door. It's like magical door, and it's all painted, and it looks like this. It looks almost like a playhouse, like a kid's playhouse.
Yeah.
And they come up upon it, and Ellie and Sam are both like, "Oh, this is so cool." And Sam starts to head to the door, and Joel's like, "No!" He pushes him back, like, "What is wrong with you people?" So he opens the door, and they go in, and come to find out that it was an underground settlement.
Yes.
And how cool was that? The detail was just amazing. I love it.
It was, and I have to tell you, that is a direct lift from the game.
Is it?
Yes. The only difference is in the game, it's full of infected, and you got to clean them all out. But yes, the little kids' tables and chairs and all the toys and everything, and the bookshelves with all exact lift. The soccer goal drawn on the wall, that's an exact lift.
Wow.
And then if you remember, there's a bit where Joel looks at the wall, and there's a little piece of paper that's up against the wall, and it's like two guys standing next to each other. It's obviously drawn by a kid, and it says like me and either Ash or Asa, I can't remember what it is. That is a direct lift from the game, because the guy who was in charge of the settlement was that guy.
Yeah, they mentioned that on I think one of those like after the show things, like for this episode. Yeah. And I was like, oh, they centered on it so much. I knew it had to have some kind of story, some sort of value, some sort of Easter egg that I just did not know. And they explained it in the post show sort of like behind the episode thing, which was really cool.
Oh yeah, it was. It was incredible to see all the detail that they pulled from that to create that set, because it is almost identical to what's in the game. Like the rooms that they were in. The game a lot more. Obviously it's a lot bigger than what we saw there. But yeah, that was incredible. That was again, as someone who's gone through the game, I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, what great detail.
Yeah. And it's also there where they find the comic book.
Yes.
And the comic book, Savage, it's called Savage Starlight is the name of the comic. And it's one of those it's in the game, and it's one of those things where you in each of the levels, as you're progressing through, you find issues of that comic.
Yeah.
And I believe if you get the whole set, all 16 of them or however many there are, it unlocks something. It gives you some bonus because you've done it. And a lot of them are not necessarily out in the open. You got to kind of look for them.
Yeah.
And whenever you find them, and you can kind of read them. It's kind of cool. You can't. It's not like you flip through the pages, but if you flip over the back of it, it kind of gives you like the synopsis of what the comic book story is, and it's this science fiction thing, which is very similar to the story that Joel and Ellie are going through in some ways, which is kind of interesting. But whenever Joel finds one, the Joel character go, oh, I bet Ellie would like this, and he sticks it in his backpack. And so and anyway, and she has like one of them in the beginning when you first meet her, and so that's how oh, that's something that if I find, I would take it for her, like the character would want it. So, but I thought that was really cool that they actually referenced the comic book, because that's a big part of the game in that way. So yeah, that was really cool too.
Oh, that was super cool. And I love too, it was a really great way to use it, because it's this fantastic bonding moment between Ellie and Sam.
Oh yeah.
It makes them grow even closer. Yeah.
Yeah. They're because like she writes down, I have 5, 7, and 11, and he's like, I have 5, 6, and 8, and she's like, awesome, and then they're reading it and kind of acting it out like kids do, and yeah, that was a real cool scene. And of course, you have Henry he's just like, oh my God, Sam is just having the time of his life here, and it's the first time I've heard him laugh in forever, and all that, so he, he's like really liking the whole idea of them as a group.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because you've got this short little sort of reprieve in the middle of the episode where Henry is revealing stuff about himself, and he's Joel is apologizing for judging and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of, there's a lot going on, the kids are able to play and all of this. So it really was like that little underground settlement was almost like a little sanctuary for a short while.
Yeah.
It was nice. So they Joel at first is gruff and is like, oh, we should keep moving. And they're like, well, wouldn't it make more sense if we waited until it was dark so that we could come out of this in the darkness and not be seen?
Yeah.
And Joel's like, oh, I guess so. So they sit tight. They're relatively safe. They're away from, no one can find where they are. So they're just, hanging tight until they can move around in the cover of darkness. So they finish, they get out of where they are, sort of step outside, and Henry, sorry.
Brian.
I know.
Brian's been dead for over an episode
now. Henry is like, I was right. I was right.
He is super proud of himself.
Oh yeah, he's like, look, there's nobody here. It's all very, whatever. It's quiet. There's no patrols. There's no nothing. It's residential. Blah blah blah.
He's like, all we got to do is go down this street, and behind the house at the end, that's where this embankment is. And once we're over that, then we're home free.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'd be great if there wasn't a sniper already sitting in there.
And this is kind of I thought it was a fun little surprise in that leading up to that, the scenes with Kathleen and Percy and all of her men, you really get the sense that they have no idea where they are.
Right.
That they're doing the house to house search. They're patrolling on the streets. And they have totally missed the possibility that they could be going through the tunnels underneath them. And so you, as a viewer, when the first time when you don't know what's going to happen, obviously, you're they're kind of tricking you into going, wow, they're going to get away with this.
Yeah, yeah.
They're going to make it. And then as they keep coming down the street, we find out that Kathleen has placed possibly the oldest sniper ever. In that house to basically guard that way out. And so he starts opening fire, and of course thank God he's a terrible shot because he can't hit anything. And so Joel tells them, you stay here, because again, very video gamey. There's lots of conveniently placed cars for them to like hide behind.
The apocalypse is very helpful for that.
It really is. And so he kind of goes around the side of the houses and gets in behind and goes in the back entrance of that house and works his way up the stairs and gets the drop on the guy. And he basically says, slide the rifle over to me and then stay up here for an hour. He's like, that's all you have to do. And the guy doesn't say a word, but he's kind of giving him the look of, I'm gonna try and shoot you with the gun. Yeah. And Joel is like begging him not to do it. And he's like, please don't do it, please. And then it cuts to Ellie and Henry and Sam's perspective out on the street, and you hear the muffled pistol shot.
Yep.
And you again, you kind of pointed out in one of your notes, is that a lot of the most awful violence is all off screen.
It really is. Yeah. There's a couple of really choice ones in the last episode. In this one, that hit me in particular. But you're right. They consistently have these moments of, which is so funny because this is there's so much violence in this story, and
oh my God.
Video games alone, I mean, it's all fighting and shooting and killing things, but they do such a good job of being very specific about the stuff you see and don't see.
Yeah. And so he takes out the sniper, and then right after he does that, he picks up the sniper rifle, which I'm like, thank God, someone with a brain finally. And then he hears Kathleen on the radio.
Yep.
And she's like, hold him there, we're almost there. And so then that's when he's like, oh, fork.
Yeah, they know where we are.
It's so great because he's yelling, run, and they're like so far away they can just barely hear it. They're like, what's he saying?
I can hear something. What's that? There's something in the wind.
Yeah, right. And then literally, this convoy of trucks comes barreling down the road. And so, again, then suddenly we get into this great set piece action battle sequence.
Yes.
That is amazing. And that they come barreling down. The people on the street are all running for their lives. And of course, Ellie's like trying to shoot at this truck that has the armored, scoop in front of it, so it's not going to do anything. Joel's trying to shoot the driver.
Yep.
And he's missing, and they're getting closer and closer and closer, and then finally Joel headshots the driver, and they make a hard left turn and go right into one of the houses in the front,
Yep.
porch. And then of course it bursts into flame and explodes. And, so there's almost like a little pause there as, Kathleen and all of her people pull up and they get out, and it's almost, kind of like a standoff because they're not quite sure where Henry and Sam and Ellie are hiding, but they
Right.
know that they're there somewhere, and they know that Joel is up in the sniper's nest, and so they're kind of slowly moving in, and Henry like does the thing of like, I'll give myself up.
Yes. Yes.
And it's so great because he yells out, I'll surrender, but let the kids go. And she's great. She's like, no, can't do that. I'm sorry. Because she's like the girl, she's with the guy that killed Brian, so she's got to go. And your brother, did you ever think that like he was supposed to die?
When she said that.
Yeah.
Awful. Just awful.
It was. And so then he, Henry tells Ellie, like, I'm gonna give myself up. You guys run, take him and run. Yeah. And she's gonna do it. And right when he does that, and again, and as you're watching it, I'm like going like, man, how are they gonna get out of this? Because there's like 50 guys there with machine guns, and Joel's up there with a sniper rifle, but it's like a single action, bolt rifle.
Yeah.
You gotta manually reload with, you know what I mean? It's not like he has a machine gun of some sort. So I'm
exactly.
I'm like this, how, something's got to happen big to distract them. And as soon as I thought
and
that,
it did.
Yeah. So the truck falls into another sinkhole.
Yep.
And then as soon as you hear that, like, well, first of all of the soldiers are like, oh crap.
Yeah. They're like, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
Or something like it. Yeah.
Right. And as soon as you kind of hear that, like, kind of hissing and moaning coming from the pit, I'm like, oh, this is how they're going to get out.
No good can come of this.
Yeah, and I love your note on this. I think it's so great.
Yeah, I just put holy swarm of infected.
Yeah, because that's what it was.
Yeah, and as soon as they started to like bound out of there, I mean, they burst. Is the only way you can put it, because there's this moment of anticipation where you're like, what is happening? I don't know. What does this mean? And then there's a second of pause, and then wah, and everything like just pops out.
Yep.
As soon as that happened, I was like, this is the most video game scene that ever video gamed. And it was amazing. I loved it.
And I don't know, when you watch it the second time, I don't know if you picked up on this, but they come bursting out, and of course the soldiers, the Kathleen's people, they all do the right thing, which is open fire, right?
Right.
There's none of the what do we do? They just shoot. And then they cut to Joel's perspective, so he's watching, and it's like a long shot, and you see, and I thought it was really great because literally the first line or two of infected are all getting mowed down.
Yes.
You see them, and they're getting hit, and their bodies are getting riddled with bullets, and they're falling to the ground, and it's really well done. Again, from a distance, live action, right? But then you see it that, the second wave and the third wave and the fourth wave gets closer and closer to the guns, and then they're mixing it up in them, and then suddenly it's a bloodbath, and it was intense, unbelievable. Oh wow.
So
and
good.
Then the bloater. I
know. You like, I mean, I'm trying to remember, does it come out like it's climbing, like hands first, pull out, like when it starts to climb out of the hole, you're like, pardon my French, but what the fuck is that?
Yeah. Well, and the first thing
amazing.
it does, it makes that like roar first.
Yes.
And so and as soon as that happens, I think Percy grabs Kathleen and puts her behind him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you see the one hand, and then it pulls up, and you see the head, and And then, yeah, it gets up and of course it's like 9 feet tall. I mean, it's just this massive dude. You're like,
Yeah.
and literally, again, I knew what it was because I play the game, but yeah, just from like Joel and Ellie's perspective, you both know they're like, what the H is that? I mean,
No kidding.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could definitely
Unbelievable.
get the sense that they have, I mean, Ellie for sure, but Joel has never seen anything like that
No.
before.
Well, if you remember in episode 2, Ellie talks about him. So
Right.
she's heard like stories about them, but yeah, they'd never actually seen them before. But I mean, what did you think about this scene when Ellie jumps into the car?
Amazing. Just
Oh,
well, first of all, the thing that I loved about the whole action sequence from beginning to end was the shifts in perspective,
mhm,
because you made that comment about how as soon as the infected bursted out, that there was the scene on the street, but then there was also from Joel's perspective, so you
mhm,
see it from his perspective. Well, then as things really start to fall apart, you're down with Ellie, you're up in the thing with Joel, then you're
mhm.
down by Kathleen, and then you're up with Joel, and then you're down with Ellie, and she gets separated and she's trying to go over and help Sam and Henry, and then you go back up to Joel, and then you're back down, and it's so fast paced and
Yeah,
keeping track of what's going around on. And then you can see he knows that she sees the small hole in the car
yeah,
that she can squeeze through, and he concentrates his energy on things that are around there so that she can jump in. It's
yeah.
almost like they had this unspoken, they understood what was going on. Can you see me? You see that? Shoot. Okay. Oh, great. I'm going right there. I'm going in there.
And
So she
he's like
hides
he's
in
almost
there.
like clearing a path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was very effective.
Oh
And
man.
then she gets in the car, and
Oh
then
man.
the most awesome clicker. Oh, the child clicker.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was great.
She had half a blonde little hair face.
It was amazing. It really was amazing.
Well,
I'd never seen anything like it. It was so cool.
what was great was that I'm guessing that the actor that they hired there had to have some kind of experience in dance,
Yeah.
because the way that she like rolled over the back seat
Oh my
and kind
God.
of, I mean, it was almost like a fish the way she was kind of flopping. It was awesome. I mean,
I
just
was thinking of like circus and like contortionist. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
or a
bending and
gymnast or something. Yeah,
yeah,
like she had to have some kind of physical training, because the
yeah.
way that she moved over those seats was just so great. And Ellie's like, "Yep, got to get out of this car."
Yep, can't stay here. It reminded me too of, remember how the infected were on Kingdom, with the crackling of the body and that like
Yes.
otherworldly bending like that they
Yeah.
could do, because they weren't who they were anymore. They
Yep.
didn't have the same kind of body structure.
Yeah.
So same idea. I mean, if you think about it from episode 1, Nana from next door, she was
Yeah.
able to get up and run around. She was in a wheelchair like a
Right.
few
Right.
hours before.
And the
Oh,
fungus that's controlling it, doesn't care about, oh, well, you're gonna break your arm if you do that. I don't care.
yeah, then no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's inconsequential. Yeah, just that whole scene was amazing.
Oh,
And you're right. That moment when she's like, "Yep, I have got to get out of this car right
must
now.
leave car. Yeah.
Yeah, must get out now.
But again,
Must go faster."
I mean, the thing is like, she's in there and she kind of is like, okay, whew, I got a moment to kind of figure out what I'm going to do. And then immediately she's like, crap, I got to get out of here because that thing's going to rip me to shreds. But going outside is like the worst possible plan, because it is total chaos
Yeah,
outside, because the infected are running over. The guys are driving the vans and smashing into them, trying to clear away. People are
yep.
shooting and they're getting dragged down and fire. I mean, it's just chaos. And
Yeah.
again, the way they stage it, and like you said, the different perspectives, you get very, very, you suddenly are like, I'm not sure where, you are. You're kind of disoriented because you're not sure. It's just, yeah, it was very intense.
Yeah, exactly that. There was some, and how do you decide? Like, do you stay in the car?
Yeah.
It's only one clicker. So there's only one. If you could take care of it, you'd be safe. But then it's like, but she knows you're there now, and she's she's moving like she's not of this earth, and you're like, okay, I got to make a decision, and it's got to be quick, and it's just as crazy, if not crazier, outside the car, and she's got that Sophie's choice of, well, I gotta go. I can't be in an enclosed space with this girl.
Yeah,
and it was the right choice.
As bad as it is out there, I can't stay here. It's worse here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, crazy. I have a question about the bloater, and I wonder if we'll get more information about it later, or if it's something, if you know when and you know it might get explained, then just say so and we'll get there. But I'm curious. It feels like the bloater is almost like more than one body mashed together, like almost like like a couple of bodies fused together to, and I'm just saying in terms of size, like how else would it grow?
Get that big?
Yeah,
well,
it just, I mean, obviously it could have just be a regular sized person with like 7 inches of like growth on every appendage, you know, like coming out like in that thickness, which is possible. I don't know. It just, there's something about it that like everything that's been science fiction-y about the show so far has been rooted in some, you know, at least some scientific like basis of fact. And now we have something that's much more of a monster. So I guess I'm trying to sort of logically explain, how did that happen in the midst of all the other infections?
Yeah.
Did they discuss it or no?
In the game, no, they don't really delve into how the bloaters came to be.
Okay.
It's more of a boss, you know, it's
a
video game
like a video
term.
game boss. Yeah.
So it's sort of like, you know, you've been fighting the infected and the clickers, but now we're gonna throw this other thing, which is a lot harder to kill.
Yeah.
And you know, in the show itself, you know, you see that, right? Percy, you know, empties a half a clip and then tells Kathleen to run. He says run and don't look back, right? So he's pretty much like, this is it for me. She takes his advice and does it. He turns around and he finishes emptying the clip into the thing, which has 0 effect.
Yes.
Right. And then it's again, wonderful shot, right? My cold dead heart just loved it. That the bloater stomps up to him, puts one arm around him, the other arm grabs his head and just right off.
Yeah.
And then just drops him. It was just, and again, you know, here's a character we've kind of met, we've kind of learned a little bit about, you know, is he a bad guy? Yeah, technically, but no, he's not necessarily a bad guy, right? He's, you know, he had some redeeming qualities about him, and the little we got to know him, and oh yeah, he's dead.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just, it was so, again, not right up in our face. It's in the background, right? It's a long shot. We don't see it, but you see it.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not in focus. It's kind of fuzzy, but you get the details of it.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was awesome. It was awesome.
But we did get the up close details of Kathleen's demise. So that was, you know, they, between Joel shooting and so many of the infected, sort of, they are killing people, but they're also sort of moving on. They're almost like running towards the city a little bit. So they're killing things, but they're sort of like mowing things down and keeping on moving. So Ellie and Sam and Henry kind of get out of that path, head towards the house.
Yes.
And they're still in a lot of danger. There's still stuff going on, but it's almost like once you got out of like what their path was, sort of straight out of the hole, and they were just going in a straight line. And then they sort of got out of that immediate path, and you're sort of off to the side of the flow, if you will. It's kind of like in the running of the bulls. If the bulls are going by and you're sort of hanging onto the fence as they run by, you're still in a lot of danger, but not the most immediate one, you know? So they're making it towards the house where Joel is, and things are looking better. They're not perfect, but they're like, we're almost there. And then of course Kathleen's there, and Henry, and they have their moment and everything. And then the girl clicker shows back up again, she it's so great. She attacks Kathleen, and we see that frenzy that we had heard about. It's exactly, you could picture the same thing happening to that one guy they came upon in the museum in episode 2. So what you had to sort of imagine would happen, especially when Ellie was like, I was attacked, this did not happen. Now they have a visual for, okay, that's what happens when a clicker attacks a person. It's not like they're going to bite you right away. They're going to do this because they're trying to tear you apart.
Yeah.
And it was haunting because it was a child. It was a child clicker. I really appreciate that, because I think that's one of the things that The Walking Dead shied away from. They did it a couple of times. We saw Zed kids like once, twice, maybe.
Yeah, not very common.
No, not at all. And you would think, I mean, hello, it's a segment of the population.
Right.
So for them right off the bat to be showing a clicker that's a kid pretty much is great. It's really great that they went there right away, because it's so disturbing to see this clicker go to town on Kathleen. And just because it's informative. Like I said, you're like, okay, now, yes, those injuries in that episode are now consistent with what this attack is. Thank you very much.
Well, it's she like the kid is like raking at her face and her neck with her hands in that frenzy. And then after she does that for about 4 or 5 seconds, then you just see she just takes a big chunk out of her neck. It was great. And I like
amazing.
too, before the car fell into the sinkhole, Henry is kind of surrendered, and he's like, he's kind of begging for his life, and it's great because Kathleen has this line where she just goes, "It ends the way it ends."
It sure did.
And then boom, the infected show up, and it's just so funny. It's very ironic that she says that, because just like a minute or two later, for her, it's going to end the way it ends.
Yeah.
So, and then I thought too, it was great because they then, Joel comes down and they're like, let's move. And they run, behind the house towards the embankment and following the plan. And you get that last long shot of that street, and you see the bloater and all the infected, and they're actually moving in the other direction, like you said, towards Kansas City.
Yeah.
Like the main. Yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm guessing that like some of the troops that were there with Kathleen retreated and are running that way, and so that's
so they're sort of following them.
Yeah, that's what I took from it. But I mean, let me ask you, because I got a very strong sense that if you were to go back into Kansas City in like a week from when this happened, everybody's dead and infected.
Yeah.
Did you not get the sense that with all of those troops and vehicles wiped out, the leadership wiped out, that the rest of the people that are in Kansas City are just going to get overrun by all those infected?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the possibility of like maybe a couple of people surviving if they are able to hide away, because a majority of those infected were clickers, right?
Yeah.
So you could, as long as you were quiet, as long as you could visually hide away, they may move on and move to some other area.
And then you could get away.
Maybe, like they did exhibit, they had the tall building. If you could get high enough up and barricade yourself and be quiet, maybe. I mean, there's the possibility exists that a couple of people, if they're smart enough and resourceful enough, they might be able to. But I don't know. It's certainly the odds are not in their favor, especially with the bloater. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
The
Right.
bloater survived obviously, and it moved on with
Yeah.
the rest of them. So that kind of like lowers the percentage rates of success.
Yeah, you just would think that any kind of barricade or barrier, that thing's going to be able to just toss aside like
of
a
course.
cookie. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're never going to go back there, so it's all speculation. But yeah, that was my guess. That's like, well, that's the end of Kansas City.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Kansas City fell, and we were there to see it.
We were there.
I had a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did I have it in my notes? No, I did not. But when Joel is first approaching that house to go up into the sniper's nest, he there's a scene where he's coming up to the back door, and they do the due diligence of showing you there's the pedestrian bridge. He sees it before it goes up there. So he confirms that I did it again. Henry was right. The pedestrian bridge is right behind the house, and they can easily access it. They just got to walk behind.
Yeah.
I had a moment there where I thought, what if Joel is thinking in his head, I could just go.
Oh, bail.
And leave them. And I think Joel of like 3 days before might have done it, because this is a totally fucked situation, and they're not gonna probably win, once it really starts to fall apart. But I think him choosing to try and take out that sniper so they can get out of there, I think that's yet another thing, another notch in favor of his affection for Ellie is growing, his connection to her as well. And yeah, I really think that was placed there on purpose to show that, Joel would, and it can be interpreted in many ways. Like I said, it could easily have been like, we put it there because we wanted to show you that, yes, Henry was telling the truth. He knew that place was correct directly behind them, and it's confirmation right away that they're in the right place.
It could have just also been showing that the bridge is still up.
Yes, absolutely.
That could, I mean, wouldn't that would be like the the George Romero apocalyptic ending, that they go all that way and then the bridge has been destroyed or has fallen apart because it's 20 years with no maintenance, and then the bloater's right behind them, So yeah.
And it's kind of a hopeful thing too. Like as far as he knows, is before he goes up to the building, as far as he just has to take this guy out, and then they can go. It's right there. It's literally right there.
Right.
And then everything sort of falls apart. But I just think that the showing of that bridge was just so symbolic for however many ways you wanted to interpret that. But for me, I really feel like it was a Joel confirmation of he's on Team Ellie now, and there's nothing he can do about it. Yeah,
well, he didn't even really hear more of those bad puns.
I know he wants to. He wants to hear the rest of it. It's interesting too, because he literally he didn't even hesitate. He just went right into the building.
Yeah,
it's right there. It's obvious. The moon is shining on it and everything. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of you're right that he's now more on Team Ellie, but I think too, Joel is clearly a guy that's driven by, and I'm going to giggle, a sense of duty. duty. But I think he does, and I think the fact that Tess, played the dying card on him.
Yes,
that
he did.
That means he's going to do everything he can to get this bratty kid to where she needs to be because Tess asked him to.
Yep.
But you're right. That's how it started. And now it's becoming more of, I kind of like Ellie.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to care for Ellie. And so it's more of that than I'm doing this because it's what Tess asked me to do.
Yeah. It's less obligation now. And it's more, it's something I feel compelled to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sort of move away from the chaos, and they cut to what looks like a motel. So you have to assume they made it across that bridge and they're in like whatever the next area is. Like an old school motel, and they go in there for the night. They're gonna rest and relax and then move on. And the kids are in one room, and Henry and Joel are in the other. And there's two really great scenes going on. Henry and Joel are really having a deep conversation about all kinds of things. And that's when Henry admits all of the stuff about the medicine for Sam, and he gave people up, and he did a bad thing, but he would do it again. But Joel also apologizes because he's like, you can't judge people for, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. I don't know your situation.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have, snapped at you the way I did. And Henry comes right back and goes, no, you're not wrong. All right. I did bad things, a horrible, horrible thing. And you also get the sense that he really liked Kathleen's brother.
Yeah. He made an impossible choice, but he had to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have that conversation going on. And then you also, in that conversation, Joel is like, we're going to Wyoming, and if you guys want to come, it's like it's as nice as Joel can kind of be on this show, apparently.
Yes.
and Henry is like, yes, absolutely, let's go. And not just because it's going to be safer, but he sees the way Ellie and Sam are bonding.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think it's really important that Sam has a friend.
Yeah. And it's great because like he sees that because it's literally happening right then and there. The kids are right in the other room, and they're bonding over that. They've still got the comic book with them.
Yep.
And she's reading it out loud, and he's teaching her some signs, and it's really adorable. And their bond and them being able to like sort of like come out of a traumatic event like that and still be having fun.
Yeah.
The two of them, the two adults, are just amazed at how resilient kids are and how they're able to not worry. And Joel made a good line where he's like, they don't have the responsibility. That's why they don't.
Yeah.
They don't have to think about all of the other things that it entails. They just have this thing that happened, and then they can set it aside and move on to the next thing if possible. And so we have the Joel and the Henry scene is happening, and there's a lot of really great emotion, great conversation happening in there. But then we cut into Sam and Ellie, and they're doing their thing, and they're bonding over stuff, and he starts to ask some questions, and
it's where you see her scared, and
if you were scared, and she says, I'm scared all the time. And then he has one question that I think is amazing, when he says,
what are you scared of?
And she says everything. He's like, when you become a monster, are you still you inside?
Well, but before that, she says, I'm scared of everything, and he kind of gives her the be serious, and she writes, I'm scared of being alone.
Yeah, which was amazing.
Yeah. And then he responds with, I'm with that line that you just said, which was heartbreaking. Yeah.
Of course, but it's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And when she sort of wants to know, like, why is he asking that? And he pulls his pant leg up, and you see that he was bit while they were, it must have happened while there was a scene while they were under a car, and they were being attacked or whatever, and they were trying to get away, and, doing the thing where you're like kicking away at something. And, and Ellie was trying to help out and pull them out of there.
Ellie kills 1.5 clickers in that scene. I mean,
she does a great job. Yeah. So he shows that he was bit, and he's, you can see he's so scared, doesn't know what to do. And then she admits, she's like, she shows him her bite area where she's got the tendrils, but there's no infection really. And she's like, I'm special. Like, I've got this special thing in me, and we don't know what it is. And then she decides she cuts her hand to bleed, and she puts her blood on his. And in my heart, I was like, I want this to work so bad. I really do. I want this to work, and then like that's the story for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
But it, of course, doesn't.
No.
Because for whatever reason that may be. But she does that. She does it, and it makes him feel better, I'm sure, and comforted. I'm special. I have this thing. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And helps him like calm and fall asleep. And then, they're like, come on, kids, it's time to go. They wake up in the morning, and she goes over. He's sitting on the edge of the bed, and she goes over and touches him on the shoulder, and he's like, wah!
No, yeah.
He's already turned.
He's turned, but he's a deaf infected person.
Yeah, so he didn't know that she was coming. So he's a clicker, pretty much. He's the opposite of a clicker.
Yeah, that he can see, but he can't hear.
Can't hear. So she touches him on the shoulder. He reacts, and then such a heartbreaking set of events. He attacks her. It ends up like they burst through the door into the other room. There's a struggle on the floor. She's freaking out. And then, there's guns drawn, and Henry's like, no, don't. And he's the one that does it. And he shoots Sam. And Ellie is like, she's crying, she's heartbroken, but also in shock. And I love the very first thing that happens after Sam is shot is Joel gets closer to her and is like, are you okay? Immediately, are you okay? And he's so concerned for her. And then Henry starts to get upset. What did I do? What did we do? What happened here? What happened? Why did this happen? Why did it happen this way? And you can see, and you're like, no, because in your head, like emotionally, he's looking at this whole situation like, and in your head, you're thinking, you're like, here's this guy, his reason for being alive, his reason for breaking rules, his reason for being around is this kid, and he's gone.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
And he shipped him. Yep.
Oh God. So Henry is distraught, absolutely distraught. And he can't cope. And then he shoots himself.
Yeah.
And that was the scene that really hit me. There's, they show, for me, we were talking about it earlier, that there's a lot of moments of violence where they don't show the violence. You hear it, you're in the other room, something happens, you hear a reaction, you hear a gunshot, you hear a thump, and you have to imagine it. Mm-hmm. And there's so many of them. There were more than I even remembered, for crying out loud. We kept listing them. But the ones that really hit me were the ones that were Ellie involved.
Yeah.
And in episode 4, she shoots Brian. You don't see it happen. You just see her shoot the gun, and then you see the aftermath. And then in this one, you don't see Henry shoot himself. You just see Ellie's reaction, and it is so raw. She gasps. She's like, oh, and she is already crying a little because of Sam, and she is just devastated that this happened. And it's horrifying. And I just, we've already been talking about it. I just think it's amazing that these two moments, we see her reactions to them and not the actual violence themselves.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And I don't know anything about the game, so I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know these characters weren't gonna, we already had Tessa's gone, Kathleen is gone, and I'm like, well, we've got two main characters that are gone. Like, maybe this is just the buddy, 4 people going to Wyoming thing. Nope. Nope. That's not what it is at all. And it, again, like I said, it really just snaps you back into the reality of this is a 2-person TV show, and that's it. That's all you're going to get is these
That's
two
right.
people's perspectives, and these other people are going to weave in and out of their story, and no matter how tragic it is. And as tragic as that was, I'm really not sure anything was more painful than Ellie writing "I'm sorry" on the board and putting it on the grave, and just Joel's reaction to that, and and she's trying to push away her emotions, where she's like, we got to go, let's, so she's taking those painful emotions and she's putting them aside, almost like Joel does.
Yeah.
So and he recognizes it, and it's just so I cried my eyes out watching this episode, I'm not gonna lie. So what are your thoughts on that whole end sequence there?
Well, yeah, I mean, super powerful. Again, I knew it was coming, so little blunted. But for me, again, it was more of the, are they really going to do this thing? But what I thought was, the just really an interesting idea was at the grave scene, you see Joel. He's the one that's lingering over the graves.
Right.
And it's almost like I took it to say that, him being with Ellie is starting to like wake up the emotional part of him.
Yes.
That he has shut down for 20 years, that
right.
he liked those two, you know what I mean? And
yep.
he feels bad that they're gone because, oh my God, it was tragic. And it was, there's no doubt. And while that's going on, you see Ellie, and she comes up, she dumps his stuff in front of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she puts the thingy, the little, erase board or whatever it is on the grave, and she spends maybe a second or two looking at it, and then she, like you said, she moves off, in the direction of Wyoming, and is actually fairly far away from Joel, and she's like, come on, let's go. And it's almost as if she is starting to shut down the emotional part of her, trying to be more like Joel because she's been around Joel and see how he deals with this world. It's a real interesting, idea here that they're kind of learning from each other and moving almost in different directions.
Yeah.
But I just have to go off on I know this is a short episode and all, but I just definitely have to go off on a little side rant here, which is
side rant away.
What is up with people in movies and TV shows of cutting their palms to do this thing? I never, that makes zero sense to me that you're going to cut across your palm, because think about it. You move your hand all the time, right? So that cut is never going to heal right. You're always going to be tearing open the skin. And in this world, you're either going to get the spores in you or you're going to just get sepsis and die. So it never makes any sense to me. If you're going to do, and it's usually in when you see it, it's like the blood oath, right? Where like the two people are like, we're going to make this treaty. And so I'm going to cut my hand and you're going to cut your hand. And then we're going to, clasp hands, and like our blood is going to mix and it's going to make the treaty. Right? And it's just like in Ellie's case, it's like, sweetheart, if you want to put some of your blood on him, cut your forearm.
Yeah.
Right. Cut some other part of you that is going to actually be able to heal. It drives me freaking crazy in all of these things. It's a total trope of, I'm just going to take a knife and I'm going to cut all the way across my palm. Don't do it. It makes no sense. Stop it. Okay.
Yeah.
So rant's over.
Rant's over.
As far as that sequence, it's, the game did it a little differently in that, and first of all, in the game, Sam is not deaf.
Yes, okay. I knew that. They talk about that in the after show.
They talk about that in the little episode, and which thank God they said that, because as I've been watching these two episodes, particularly mostly this episode, I'm like, was that kid deaf? I'm like, I swear to God, I don't remember that. I'm like, I remember him talking, in the game. You know what I mean? And that is a big change that they did make. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is the end sequence. The whole Ellie finds out and cuts her hand and does that. That is completely new to the show. They basically decide they're in the morning. They're all going to go to Wyoming or Montana or wherever they're going, and they go to sleep. And then it cuts to the next morning, and she goes in to wake him up, and he's sitting on the bed, and she taps him, and then that sequence from then on is pretty much spot on. You know, he tackles her. Henry gets Joel's gun. And, Joel, of course, wants to, protect Ellie, and Henry's like, no, go stay away from him. And then he shoots him. And then, what did I do? Joel's like, hey, man, put the gun down, give me the gun. And then in the game, and I don't know if this is more effective or not, but in the game, Henry, is kind of looking at Joel, and then he just puts the gun up to him, and then you hear the gunshot, and you hear the gunshot, it smashes to black, and that's like the end of that chapter of the game. And then it stays black for a second or two, and then it fades up, and Joel and Ellie are much farther west, and it's snowing, and they've got on their winter coats and stuff, and so clearly some time has passed.
Right.
And again, remember, in the game, they're in Pittsburgh. They're not in Kansas, so they're even further east, right? So that a lot of time has passed, and they don't dwell on it. They don't the grave scene. They don't do any of that. It's just he pulls the trigger, smash to black, and now we're 2 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever away from when that happened.
Because you got to figure now from here on out they're walking.
Yeah. And so it was shocking in the game when that happened, that's how those two characters exit. You're not expecting that in a video game, right?
Right.
And I think the way that they did it on the show was great too. I mean, that like I said, the scene with the graves was super powerful. And, when she puts that "I'm sorry" on there, how can you not just be like, oh God, particularly because Joel has spent a lot of the last 2 episodes telling her that it's not her fault that Brian is dead, that, you shouldn't have to do stuff like that. And now, like it or not, right or wrong, Ellie certainly feels responsible for Sam's death.
Oh, for sure.
And maybe doubting a little of her awesomeness in that, is she going to how can she save the world when she couldn't even save one person,
Yeah.
So
it's definitely a downer.
Yeah. So totally different. But again, super powerful. And what a way to wrap up that story, because like I said, we just got done talking. You have this unbelievable battle sequence before that.
Yeah.
And they get away. And, Kathleen is dead, and, there's no one coming after them, right? And you almost like that scene with Joel and Henry, it's and while the kids are playing in the other room, it's almost like uplifting, and you're hopeful. And you think, wow, like you said, maybe it's going to be the 4 of them on the road now,
right.
and okay, and maybe we'll see where this goes, and how long are those 2 going to stay with them? And then it's like, well, not very long.
Yeah, and it makes you think of the way Tess put it, which was, take the win. Like, can you not recognize when there's a win? Yeah. And in that moment when they were, relaxing at the hotel before they get started out again, it was, they were in a win moment.
Yeah.
For at least a few hours.
Yeah, where they're like, wow, you know what? This, finally, what did Tess say? Finally some good luck, right? Finally something good happened, and then this crappy world goes, not so much. But
not so much. Yeah.
But yeah, again, I loved it. It's just kind of funny to me is that the whole sequence with Kathleen and the bloater and all that, not in the game at all.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Wow.
Not in the game at all. No, they you have a sequence where eventually you get to the bridge and you run, and the Hummer with the machine gun is like barreling down on you, and you have to swerve around abandoned cars and stuff to get away from it. And you do that, and then you come up to a little like subdivision, and that's where the sniper is, but it's during the daytime. And it's basically the same thing happens. The kids and Henry stay in the back, and Joel you have to kind of infiltrate up to get behind the house. And the sniper in the game is way more accurate than that old man was in the movie. I mean, he shoots you a lot. And you eventually you get up and you go up in the back of the house. You go up to the room where he's in. You kill him. You don't have the standoff. You just kill him. And then as soon as you do that, then the kids and Henry start moving towards the house, and once they do that, then militia guys show up, and then now as Joel, you're shooting them with the sniper rifle. And after you kill a bunch of them and they're kind of gone, then some infected start showing up, but it's only onesie twosies and there's no bloater. But again, it's in broad daylight. It's not at night. So that sequence is a little different as well. But again, the basic idea of it was pulled, which that there's a sniper there, and when you finish it, then you do get the cutscene where Sam is bitten and all that stuff happens. So again, so far they're sticking right with the story, which is amazing. But
I love it. It.
Yeah.
Anything else from episode 5 that we should make sure we cover? I think I got everything on my list, and I think we got most of your stuff.
I think we did. I don't see anything else. Again, I mean, wow, what a 2 great hours of television, man.
I know, and I reiterate, I'm so glad that in covering 2 episodes at a time, that the way we did it had these 2 together, because I can't imagine doing like 3 and 4 or doing 5, and we haven't seen 6 yet, but matching 5 with whatever the next episode is.
Yeah.
I'm so glad these 2 together, because they were such a good package together. They answered each other's questions. They posed new ones, and then and it was journeys of people from these 2 episodes, and then they ended sadly.
Yeah. And like in the game, it's like the end of a chapter.
Yeah.
And now, next week, if you watch the scenes for next week, they're in the snowy, wintry area.
It's like a totally new area, new situation, new time of year, it looks like. So it's interesting. It's going to make a big jump. And I think it would have been jarring to talk about, like, say, episode 5 with episode 6 based on that. So, yeah. So this worked out really well to talk about these together. And it was such a great conversation to talk about, 4 and then into 5. And we know it's long, but we hope you guys liked it. So if we don't have anything else to discuss, what we should do now then, since we've been jibber-jabbering for forever, we should take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to quickly discuss all of our listener feedback and talk about what's coming up on the podcast.
Yeah, so stick around just a little bit longer, because we'll be right back.
Hey there, Internet. Do you like scary movies? What about going way off the rails while discussing your favorites, like Nightmare on Elm Street?
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look
Can you
fine.
see me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you okay, Summer?
Tell us what you're seeing.
Friday the 13th.
She's like, you're driving this whole thing, so it's like you're either gonna steer us to safety or you're gonna careen us all up to our death.
Either way, I'm
fine with it. I can see Summer doing a barrel roll out of a car now.
I know. Down a cliff, down some fields.
Halloween.
Exactly. Tom. And that mustache and that butt.
Oh my God.
And more. Trust me when I say that there's no movie that we can't derail right off the cliff. So come check out the Dolls of Horror podcast with your hosts, Girl on Gore Jamie and Summer of Fear. And me, producer Jesse, as we tackle all the horror movies, both new and old, and hopefully give you a laugh or two along the way. The Dolls of Horror is available on all podcast streaming services, including Apple and Spotify. Visit thedollsofhorror.com for more information.
I'm Pitney.
And I'm Amelia.
And we're from
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique. Who are we?
Why, we're your new best friends, of course.
Pull up a seat and listen in to what we think about people, places, and things.
Geeky stuff, horror movies, weirdos we know, spirituality, sexuality, food, filth.
It's like eavesdropping on the people at the next table for like an hour or so, and wishing you could join in on their conversation.
Also, do you see who just came in? Look at that hair.
Oh, honey, just... no.
Bitchiness, you're soaking in it.
We soften your hands while you do the dishes.
Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique.
We're here.
We're queer. And
we're in your ear. Every other Friday, where all the classiest podcasts are found.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We are going to jump right into our listener feedback and then chat a little bit about what's coming up on the podcast. You know the drill. So first up, we got an email from our pal Amelia from the Pitney and Amelia podcast. So we're excited about that. And here it goes.
All right.
So Amelia says, it works out kind of perfect that y'all are doing 4 and 5 together because they're kind of one story. Agreed. Makes it much easier to discuss them both together. I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep up this momentum. How are they continuing to blow me away every week like this? Maybe it's the fast pace. When I think about the first couple episodes and how much story was covered, it's pretty impressive. I guess when you have a tiny cast, you can move things along a hell of a lot faster and still have lots of room for character development and exposition. How about that?
Interesting.
Interesting. This small cast thing. What do you speak of?
This story just got interesting.
So she continues and says, although when they showed the next week on and we saw Tommy, I was like, I appreciate them moving things along, but how fast do they want me to believe Joel and Ellie just walked all the way across Kansas? Because that's not a small state. And if we're talking all the way to Cody, Wyoming, that's like the northwest corner of the state, close to Yellowstone National Park. Plus there's mountains to go through, so they better hop a train or something. Back to 4 and 5. I don't know if that's the name Henry doesn't evoke power or fear to me or what, but not knowing why Kathleen's number one priority is to find Henry, and she was always asking, where's Henry, felt very, who the fuck is Henry? And what could he possibly have done that was such a big deal to all these people for me? And finding out it was just that he ratted on her brother, who people liked a lot, and really it was just her personal vengeance and nothing more. Like, all these people are being asked, where's Henry, before they are executed, all because her brother was killed and she's out for revenge. Wow. Then we see Henry, and he's this sweet, gentle guy with a baby brother, and I wanted to wrap a blankie around them and keep them safe right away. And in her moment of finally being face to face with Henry, it's so clear that she could kill him right then, and she would be even more lost, because then she would have no purpose anymore. And it's all there in Melanie Lynskey's incredible performance. So great. Starting episode 4 with Ellie's cute little face when trying to make Joel laugh, and then her face at the end of 5. Ow, my heart, big face crying emoji. I'm actually seeing people online who somehow can't accept Bella Ramsey in this role, as if she's not absolutely slaying. I'm sure none of those neckbeards could act their way out of a wet paper bag. I agree. Speaking of faces in my heart, damn it, Pedro Pascal is stupid beautiful. Did y'all see him hosting Saturday Night Live? Lasai. Onward to Wyoming! And then I had to include a little adorable postscript. So Amelia also put a little note on one of our Instagram posts, and she says, I already sent you a long rambling email, but I just remembered a thought I had while watching 5. When Ellie was being a badass and utterly competent, I couldn't help but think how she had only been out in the world for a week? 2 tops, and she was already way more trustworthy than Carl was at that age. And he'd been out in this shit for years. I mean, it's probably mostly Laurie's fault, but still.
Well, it's because, he's not Shane's son. So that's really all you can draw from that.
Yeah, I mean, is it really Laurie's fault, or is it, I mean, he's got the Rick DNA, which obviously, Judith did not. So,
And look at her.
I know. She was a badass. She
an
was
ass kicker.
competent and could be depended upon. First of all, your email was adorable, and I loved the follow-up, and Amelia, you're great. Please don't stop writing things into us. Maybe even when we're, like, not covering something that you're even...
Just send us random emails.
Just send us a random email, because that would be hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Thanks again for writing in, Amelia. We always look forward to your stuff.
The only thing that I would say to that, Amelia, is, they kind of let it out in the explanation of Kathleen's brother that he was like the original leader of the resistance. And and like Percy even says, we all loved him. He was our leader. And Henry says that too, that he was this incredible guy. He was selfless and all this stuff. And so that's kind of why everyone is following Kathleen's, we got to find Henry thing, because they all know that he ratted out Kathleen's brother. And again, that was the original resistance leader. So that hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea as to, why, the Finding Henry thing was so important to her, and why they all were like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So,
yeah.
But yeah, amazing feedback. Please keep it up.
Yeah, don't stop writing in. Don't stop, please. Don't stop. We love it too much.
All right, so moving along, our next piece of feedback comes from the international desk, and this is from our fan in jolly old England, Miss Bev 2. Hello, Bev. And she sent this via the email, and she says, "Hi guys, thought I'd try emailing this time to avoid spoiling anything for anyone. Now I have to try and remember episode 4, and it's been a busy week at work, so forgive me if I missed something important." Totally understand. Episode 4 seems like it went by in a flash after the slow burn that was episode 3, but it was still a great episode. It showed us more of the developing relationship between Ellie and Joel, some lovely moments of fun in a stark world. Agreed. I have a feeling that as this relationship evolves, Joel will want to bring more laughter to Ellie's life as she witnesses more horrors. I felt that besides the ever-growing relationship, episode 4 was mainly there to set up the gut punch that was episode 5. That this was a look at the world of gray. Nothing can be seen just in black and white, and no one is purely good or bad.
Yeah.
I agree. Kathleen seems to be evil, but she's responsible for toppling a dictatorship. She wants Henry to die as he's responsible for her brother's death. All Henry was trying to do is keep his own brother alive, and Joel is searching for his own brother. That's a lot of brothers.
It is.
The whole thing is a gray area for Joel, as he would do anything to protect his brother and kill anyone who would do him harm, so he understands all sides. I agree with that. Yeah. I think, yes, Joel, like he said, Joel kind of, like he says, I can't really judge you because I don't know your circumstances. The only one who still sees things in black and white is Ellie, who just wants to save her new friend. By the end of the episode, Ellie has lost a little of her innocence, and the relationship between her and Joel hits a gray area as she chooses not to tell Joel about her attempt to save Sam. It highlights the fear she feels about Joel leaving her if he thinks she's not special. Then that's a very, I think, you're spot on there. That, again, Ellie is classic example of abandonment issues.
Yes.
And then Bev ends it up by saying yet another 2 amazing episodes, and yes, 2 agreements there.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness.
So,
thanks for writing in, Bev. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love the feedback.
Bev left a note someplace else, and she said she was so wrapped up in writing her email that she forgot to sign it.
Oh, no.
And she was worried that we wouldn't know it was her, even though it came through as an email from Bev T. And I was like, well, you can only be one person, Bev. So no worries. We knew it was you. Don't worry about it. And I've often forgot to sign emails myself. And I get it. Totally get it.
Isn't that one of those like fears of becoming your parents? Like those commercials, where like it's like I didn't sign the email, and then the guy's like, you don't have to do that. The computer knows who you are.
The best one is the clapping at the movie. No one who made the movie saw her.
No, yeah.
All right. Anyway, we digress. Next up, we got a little last minute. Just got it in before the time expired. Basically, Karen Cohen, you sent in your feedback. Really, I saw the notification while we were already recording, and I was like, well, of course we're going to include it. Hello. So thanks, Karen. So Karen wrote in via Facebook. And she says, nice, all caught up. Episode 4 was good, maybe a little slow, but episode 5 had some great action. I loved it when the clickers came running full speed out of the pit. I thought they couldn't see, but they seemed to have some great aim, like the one who jumped on Kathleen. Now that was some accuracy. How did all the clickers get underground in the sinkhole? I did feel like I've seen that storyline before, though. You're forced to kill someone you love, but can't live with it and then kill yourself. But it was still unexpected. Is this where the show is going? Introduce characters, get us to like them, then kill them off? The game is just the two of them, so I guess that would be a reasonable direction. Our heroes had some crazy timing, getting there 11 days after the takeover. I thought it was a great touch that Ellie brought out the guy's bag and jacket and set it down next to Joel. He has nothing after the car crash, and it makes the most sense to take what someone else doesn't need anymore. Cheers! Which I thought is the best way. Like, we're going to talk about this absolute tragic ending. Cheers!
Love you guys.
Karen, thanks for writing in. And yes, absolutely. That was such a horrifying and sad and such a poignant, but also, I mean, it is what it is, you know. It's just like that scene in Walking Dead where they didn't help that guy when they were going to get the crib for who was that for? Oh, it was for Judith and everything. Yeah. And they went to that town that was nearby, and they went past the guy with the orange backpack, and and he was dead when they drove back through. And they stopped, came back, grabbed the pack, and then kept going. It's brutal and it's dark and it's bleak, but it is what it is. You gotta live. You gotta live.
It's like Kathleen said. It ends the way it ends.
It does end the way it ends. All right. So not as much feedback this week, but long feedback, lots of thoughts. Yeah. So we appreciate all of it, guys. Keep it up. We can't wait to hear from you next week. And speaking of next week's episode number 6, title of the episode is Kin. Mm-hmm. And since we've already seen the next on scenes and we see that there's some Tommy action happening, yep, I'm pretty sure I know why they named the episode Kin. Yeah. You know what I mean?
In honor of the Greg Kin band that, of course, did the classic song Jeopardy.
Yeah, Love's in Jeopardy, baby. Ooh.
And, of course, Weird Al parodied it and as I Lost
on Jeopardy.
Yes.
Of course. I'm not sure if they're going to release this one early again. I thought I saw a date that was a little earlier than the Sunday, but whatever that may be, feel free, folks. As soon as you see the episode, send us your feedback so we can include it in with the podcast. So if you're able to watch it early, I'm not sure if they're doing that with the app again this week, or if you're just going to watch the regular broadcast on Sunday night. Either way, as soon as you watch it, let us know your thoughts. We would love to include it. And we've mentioned it a couple of times, and you guys put it in your feedback. And yes, we're caught up, and we're so excited.
Thank God.
And we only have to cover one episode at a time. So instead of a 3-hour podcast, you'll get a 2.5-hour podcast. Like
2:45.
Yeah, like what you're used to.
Exactly.
So we look forward to just covering one episode at a time, and which is great because next week when we are covering just a single episode, we will actually have time to cover the fact that Steve's going to LA this weekend to go to a convention, and we can tell you a little bit about it now, and then we'll get some feedback on what kind of time you had when we talk next week. So Yay. What's the convention you're going to again? I know it's Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's a convention that's been out in LA. It's called Gallifrey 1, and this is, I believe, the 33rd year that they've done the show and done the convention.
Wow.
And so I believe this one is called Gallifrey 1 33, just for the record, which, is kind of an old school reference to old vinyl records. And what's great about it is this year, 2023, is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Ooh.
The pilot episode aired on November 22nd, 1963. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's the day that Kennedy was shot.
Oh, my God. I'm not sure I ever knew that.
And the ratings were so bad for the first episode because everybody in England was watching the other, like BBC One, for the coverage on the assassination, that the showrunner back then, which was a gal named Verity Lambert, and she's one of the first women to ever be a showrunner on television anywhere in the world, not just in England. She was so upset by that she made the BBC rebroadcast the first episode the next week because she said it wasn't fair. Nobody was watching. And it wasn't our fault. And so, yeah. But anyway, it's the 60th anniversary, so it's big stuff. And we're going primarily because Jodie Whittaker is going to be there. Jodie Whittaker just got done playing the Doctor, and she was the first female Doctor, and so it's going to be really exciting to get to meet her. She's a great actor anyway. She's in a bunch of British dramas. She was in the series Broadchurch, which is a really, really depressing detective story about the death of a child that was amazing. If you ever get a chance to see it. And so that's going to be really fun. So we're going out there on Thursday and coming back, I think, either Sunday or Monday. And so it's very possible if the hotel has HBO on Sunday night, I might be watching the episode in the hotel room. But we'll have to see. I can't remember what my itinerary is. But I will definitely be back and ready to go next week. And I'll have more details about how it went. So very excited.
Yeah, we recorded a little earlier this week. We're going to try and consistently stick with Tuesdays, so it gives us a little bit more time to watch the episode more than once. But we went a little early this week because of Valentine's Day, and if I recorded a podcast tomorrow night, I would be divorced. Mm-hmm. And so next week we're definitely recording on Tuesday because it'll give Steve time to get back and get his bearings after the convention, and he'll have plenty of time to watch the episode. So we're gonna chat about episode 6, and we're gonna get some feedback on how that convention went for you. I can't wait to hear. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Exciting. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for us this week, folks. Thanks again for coming along on this 3-hour tour. And I'm your captain, and we look forward to chatting. I'm the little buddy. Little buddy. And we look forward to chatting with you again next week. But as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Gilligan. I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head, folks.
Yes, because as we know, body shots just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed. Right. Although really we're at 2 regular episodes just smushed together, so we're not.
Yeah, which
it's not
isn't
like we're overly long.